I guess we can call to order with 7, because that's not embarrassing or anything. All right, let's call this meeting to order at 7:03. We'll move into representatives to the ASUC reports. I don't believe we have, again, our UCPD report. Those will resume, as I said last week, in November. We shouldn't have a chancellor's representative or GA representative tonight, if I'm not mistaken, so we'll move then into the ASUC auxiliary report.
Hello? 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 Hi. Okay. Okay, so for staffing and hiring, so Event Services has created a new student internship position for event planning. It is a 1-year internship. So if you're interested in a student internship for event planning, send a cover letter, resume, and a class schedule to Vivi Nordahl at berkeley.edu. The Art Studio has posted a ceramics tech position. They hope to have someone hired by December 1st. The Art Studio has brought in 6 new instructors for the fall in sculpture, digital arts, photography, and drawing. The Division of Student Affairs has some transitions going on with stuff in a variety of areas, moving over to the campus shared services area. This will affect our IT services, some financial services, and a few other administrative areas for the auxiliary, but it should not affect directly the ASUC or the GA. The Lead Center Student Org Advising and Leadership Team is excited to announce that Mr. Deepak Sharma has accepted the role as the Lead Center Coordinator for Student Org Advising and Leadership Development, working with our academic, departmental, and professional orgs. He will join the Lead Center on December 2nd. Big thanks to all who participated in the search. For additional information, you can contact Fred McCall. He's our Assistant Director for Org Advising and Leadership Development. And then for our marketing team, they've received 76 applications for the graphic design position. They have narrowed it down to 5 phone interviews and will begin interviewing this Friday and Monday. For construction facilities, the Northwest Stair, it is officially opened, celebration and a dedication on the 25th. So thanks to everyone who attended. And then from the Lower Sproul Redevelopment Project Team, this is just a note to your constituents that bicycles are reportedly being secured on the ADA ramp at the new stair. Don't do that. Please help communicate that it is a violation of Fire Marshal Code to obstruct the ADA or pedestrian throughway. So UCPD will be cutting locks and confiscating bikes when they are found to be secured on the ramp. Anna Head is in the queue for the fire marshal inspection on the upper floor, and the emergency egress lighting was upgraded. Then BCCAL will be relocated in December to a pod during the northeast stair demolition, and the location of the pod is yet to be determined. Program updates. As a reminder, venues managed by Event Services are free for student groups to rent. This includes setup and breakdown of events. The Art Studio is having their late fall session begin this week and next week. The studio is now offering courses in Photoshop and programming for the media arts. They're utilizing the new Wheeler Mac Lab. Okay. This afternoon, 23 fraternities and sororities hosted Trick or Greek. The annual service event brings 300 local kids to the South Side to enjoy face painting, games, and haunted houses. The Multicultural Greek Council, they received 9 applications for expansion and will be inviting up to 5 to present to the council. The hope is to invite more organizations to support the unique needs of the campus community. IFC, or Interfraternity Council, is planning a disaster preparedness training for the Calgary's community to help chapters and their members plan for potential large-scale emergencies in local areas. Finally, in other updates, the Auxiliary Executive Director and Director for Event and Facility Operations are attending the UC Student Union Directors Meeting and the National Association of College Auxiliary Services Annual Conference. And I know there are a number of senators in here who have contacted or in our one-on-ones have talked about meeting with the Career Center. I'm setting that up. So if you want to talk to Career Center, come talk to me after this meeting or send me your team's availabilities and I'll try to mesh it together. And so we can all meet with the Career Center all at once, if you had acknowledged that in terms of your one-on-ones or if you're interested in that conversation. Any questions?
Questions for Rob, our ASUC auxiliary representative? All right, if there are none, thank you, Rob.
Cool.
So without a Commercial Student Services Board report, which I believe we don't have this week, we'll move into our Finance Officer report. I guess Dennis is not here yet. His report should be included in your packet, his written report at least. We'll move then into guest announcements. Do you have a question, Senator Truax?
Can I call a special order right now, or should I wait a little bit?
What exactly do you mean by call a special order?
Or can I call for a special order for next meeting?
We do that under approval of the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no guest announcements, we will skip over roll call because it's not time yet and move to approval of the minutes from October 23rd, 2013. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, the motion has been made. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any opposition to the motion to approve the minutes from October 23rd, 2013? Any abstentions? Great, seeing none, motion carries. We'll move then into new business. So our bill packet this week looks like it's missing some of the bills for next week, if I'm not mistaken, strangely. So preliminarily, and authors, please correct me if I'm mistaken, I would say that we should allocate SB 43 to External Affairs, SB 44 to Constitutional and Procedural Review, SB 45 also to External, SB 46, I'm going to hold on that one for a second, and then SB 47 goes to Finance. So for clarity on SB 46, space reallocation bills go to Conrev. However, if the bill also wants to make a statement about securing a broader space on campus, it should also go to External. So Senator Mahabat, do you want to send it to both committees? Okay, so then SB 46 will go to both Constitutional and Procedural Review as well as External and University Affairs. So with those bill allocations as suggested, is there a motion to send those bills to committee?
Second.
Right. It's been moved and seconded. We're getting very efficient at this. Is there any opposition to the motion? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. So we'll now move into approval of the agenda for November 6th, 2013. Senator Truax, you had a special order request?
Yes. So Matt, the GA representative, who's on the board of recreation, the governing board of recreational sports with me, he really wants to do presentations about the GA and the ASUC, just like a quick 2-minute presentation on just like how to best put student input into the committee. So is that okay if we do that? And just about the rec sports in general.
And you've confirmed that he's available and willing to come on the 6th?
Yes.
Okay.
On November 6th, just like really quick, like 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, so do you want to make a motion to add that to the agenda?
Motion to add that to the agenda.
All right, so there's been a motion made to add a rec sports presentation to the agenda for November 6th. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any opposition? Any abstentions? Great, motion carries. Senator Quinn?
Move to put a special order on the agenda for 15 minutes for the protest about the Keystone XL pipeline and the environmental movement.
Okay, so there's been a motion. Is there a second? All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. We have 2 special orders for next week. Senator Truax, do you have an idea of how long the rec sports presentation will be?
Yeah, I said like 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, so why don't we have rec sports come at 8? 8-ish. Normally that's when special orders start. And then we'll do fossil free after, or Keystone XL after, rather. Wow, we are moving very quickly again this week. We're now in executive officer reports. Are there any executive officers here aside from me? Fantastic. So I'll move into my report then, and I'll try to go extra slow so that some of the other executives can perhaps get here in the time that it takes me to deliver my report. Just some announcements off the top, or I guess these are updates, and then we'll do some events that are happening from EVP or co-sponsored by EVP. First, Heidi, our Controller General, has picked up the process of finding you all committee secretaries. So for those of you who have ever had to take minutes, I've had to take minutes. It is an intense job if you're also trying to be involved in the process of the committee. And so that's why I think it's really important for us to have standing committee secretaries. It allows new students to get involved in the ASUC. It allows the senators to fully participate. And I think broadly speaking, rather than dividing your attention between minutes and participation, we'll have someone who's fully focused on creating really solid minutes for the committees, and so that you all don't have to deal with that process. Now, we have a commitment from the ASUC office manager to add those to secretariat staff. What we need now is to promote the positions. So if you all would really like somebody to take minutes in your committees and get someone hired into these, we are going to rely on you to help promote the application. I believe the application is up. And Heidi probably sent that link out to all of you. I can ask her to send it again after tonight. But if you all can, it should be just a CalLink form. So if you all can put that up on your Senate blogs or on your Facebooks or something like that, if you know people who are particularly adept typists and good at taking minutes, by all means, please help us recruit them. The process for screening or vetting candidates, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be before a committee made up of Heidi, the Controller General, as well as the vice chairs from each of the standing committees who are so familiar now with taking notes that they will easily be able to see the good qualities in a candidate who is taking on that role. So with that selection process, it's not something that the Senate is formally appointing because this is coming out of Secretariat budget, so the Secretariat will ultimately be responsible for, the office manager will ultimately be responsible for choosing these. I just wanted to let you all know about that and really encourage you to promote them strongly. One other note, while we are still having the vice chairs do minutes, it would make our lives much easier if when the minutes are sent back to us, they could be labeled as minutes and not as agendas. And so like when notes are typed on a document that is an agenda, which is common, if we can just make sure to change the title at the top to minutes and the document title and so forth so that that's clear for all of us. Also, EVP Finance Department, Senator Feinman?
Yeah, just to clarify, are the minutes supposed to be like transcripts of what happens like Mr. Wack does, or just kind of like hot topics that people...
So the bylaws are written in a way that requires Senate proper to have really exhaustive minutes. It's supposed to have a summary of the entire conversation that happened, basically. Committee minutes are not as specific, and generally speaking, it's sufficient to have like a summary of maybe like substantive points, but the main purpose is to show which motions passed or failed.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
On finance, my finance department is working on, it's almost completed a really thorough budget analysis. I spoke to you all during Senate training about this weird process where we over-allocate every year in the spring. It's just like a ritual that we over-budget in the spring budget by a significant amount, yet sometimes in some years we end up with a surplus anyway, and we contribute to carry forward anyway. So we're trying to figure out where that comes from, and we've looked back over the last, I think, 4 years of ASUC budgets and compared that with what was actually spent out of the various accounts to see where overspending and underspending is happening, and we'll be reporting back to you all on that soon, probably first to Finance Committee, but also to Senate proper if the Senate would like that. I also have a brief update on the tabling program. I met today with Fred McCall from the Lead Center, and we're going to do the ASUC tabling program hopefully in partnership with the Lead Center so that we can jointly promote both, because as you all know, ASUC involvement and ASUC internships are not necessarily right for everybody, but what the ASUC doesn't cover, literally every other student organization that's registered is done through the Lead Center. So I feel like if you can't find it in the ASUC, hopefully there's something in the Lead Center through registered student groups that is available to you. More to come on that in the future. Also an update from Lizzie about the bill tracker. The Senate bill tracker is up. Again, we're sort of testing this out to see how it works, but you can now see online which bills have passed, failed, which committees they've come from, co-sponsors, all of that. If you go to asuc.org/bill tracker, you can see that. And it's basically all of the bills from our term. Once we have this really up and running, we'll try to work on going backwards through previous hodgepodges of Senate bills to put them in a more orderly fashion. And then briefly, events. So tomorrow, for those of you who are interested in the Keystone Pipeline and what's going on with that political shenanigans, we have a rally that's happening on Sproul that's sponsored by Fossil Free Cal and the Keystone XL pipeline groups. EVP is co-sponsoring the event. ASUC Sustainability Team, a bunch of other campus units are involved. and that starts at 12:30 on the Mario Savio steps. So if you're interested in hearing a little bit from the people who are most involved in like fossil-free movements on campus, look out for that. November 14th, I'll probably be announcing this every week until it happens, but November 14th in Unit 1 APR from 4:30 to 6 p.m., we're going to be having, I guess what has ended up becoming like a large aggregated focus group called the new ASUC. And so this is that concept about like what would your ideal student government do for you? How often would it communicate with you? Like that sort of thing. And so if people are interested in like vetting those concerns, inviting student groups, we will be sending out a big CalLink invitation, of course, to the people there. But if you'd like your constituencies to come, we'll email out details about that. Hopefully we'll have graphics and flyers done for that soon so we can do Facebook banners and whatnot, because that's what we're supposed to do. On November 15th, this is still a tentative date, but we're looking at partnering with ASUC Sustainability Team to do an environmental community social event. And this is something that's like agenda free. It's not a particular cause or anything like that, but it's literally just for people who are involved in environmental activism to come and network. The inspiration is from something called Green Drinks that happens in cities around the world where a local like bar or restaurant will host people from the surrounding area to just like talk to each other and network. Obviously, we're not going to be serving alcohol at ours, but one can hope. On November 18th, there's going to be, sorry, one correction. So the rally tomorrow is called Fossil Free Haunting. And so while closely connected with Keystone XL, it's not the formal Keystone XL protest. But if you're interested in seeing like a fossil-free sort of post-apocalyptic, this is what the fossil-free future or fossil fuel future is going to look like so that we can advocate for a fossil-free one, go to that. On November 18th, however, there will be an actual Keystone XL protest, and that's gotten quite huge. There have been local groups, so the Sierra Club in Berkeley has agreed to co-sponsor and promote the event. Organizers for the event have been promoting at local farmers markets, and so lots of people in the community are going to come in addition to environmental activists on campus, so it's going to be pretty big. Look out for that on November 18th. November 20th, we're going to have our forum on classroom reservations and the classroom reservation process. That time is still to be determined, but more details on that soon. So if you or your student group has ever had a grievance with the process of reserving a classroom, this would be a place to begin that conversation. It's November 20th. The time and location are still to be determined at this point. And then, as a brief aside on that, I showed you all that memo that I gave to Walter Wong, the registrar, about suggestions on changing the classroom policy. I'm looking to take that from a draft to a formal recommendation in the relatively near future, working with event services so that we can report something to the Committee on Classroom Management. There's a third C that I don't know what it stands for in that committee name, but CCCPM. On November 21st, we're going to have our Student Resources Workshop in conjunction with the Lead Center. In between now and then, we'll be consulting with the Senate committee that is tasked with not only appointing our Finance Officer and Greek Affairs Officer, but also the Student Resources Workshop to help us develop content for the ASUC portion. So there will be an ASUC portion, a Lead Center portion, and then a sort of feedback portion on what resources is the ASUC or the Lead Center not providing you right now that would be helpful for you as an involved student on campus. And I think that's all I have in terms of updates right now. So there was enough in terms of updates on events that I obviously didn't go over too much of my report, but we have, or my written report, but we have about 3 minutes left if anyone has questions about stuff that I've gone over or components in my written report. And if not, we can move on to our student advocate, who I think I saw walk in. Cool, thanks. Question? No? Okay, yeah. Yeah, Senator Woche? Oh, you're correct, yes. All right, so now that we are at 7:20 and senators have graced us with their presence, let's move on. Senator Chow? Present. Senator Chung? Present. Senator Feynman? Present. Senator Yu? Senator Kong? Present. Senator Lee? Here. Senator Mohabbat? Present. Senator Mullen? Senator Woche? Present. Senator Pacheco? Present. Senator Pandya? Senator Quinn? Present. Senator Rafi? Here. Senator Shen? Senator Snowen? Here. Senator Tan? Present. Senator Truax? Present. Senator Upadhyay Yula? Here. Senator Week? Here. Senator Wu? Present. Senator Mullen? Okay. So thank you all for enduring that and being audible. I'd like to welcome up, if we have other executive officers here. Do we have anyone from Office of the President yet? No? Okay, so we'll go, I guess, down our list. External Affairs VP, do you want to?
Hi, everybody. The majority of the stuff is actually on the written report for once. But one thing that I did want to talk to you all about and also get your opinions on, if during questions you have any opinions or thoughts on it, is I'm working with some of the Telegraph business owners to talk about how Telegraph can be more useful to students. We've done tons of surveys and found continuously that when students need things, they will go away from Telegraph. Whether that be food is like the biggest draw to Telegraph, and even that, the majority of students will go to like Chipotle or Subway. So students consistently are being drawn away from Telegraph. And so one program that the business owners are interested in implementing is a space use program. And basically they would offer their restaurant space to student groups at discounted rates to like rent out for meetings or banquets or events, and also do discounted like catering for those events. And so that's one thing that they're interested in maybe working on, is putting together like a database of what they're willing to offer student groups, and then student groups can solicit space and food from them. So maybe when I yield my time to questions, if you all have thoughts on that or recommendations for the form or how that would work, I'd love to hear those. Or if you want to talk to me off the floor, that's great too. And then a couple other things that I wanted to bring up are we are planning for the Ignite Week of Action, which is going to be the week after the Students of Color Conference. And right now the agenda is sort of open, and all of our partners and groups are working on different events that they want to host during the Ignite Week of Action. So that being said, if you're doing any organizing around student issues and you're interested in being part of the Ignite Week of Action, this is a really good time to kind of utilize the student excitement and attention around the Students of Color Conference and bring it back to campus and get students to organize around that. So aside from the State Department, our National Affairs Department is also going to be doing a mini student debt awareness campaign and teach-in. So if you want to get involved with that, you're welcome to contact me also. I also wrote that I finished the letters that you all have been assigning me to write. I'll upload those to my website, I think is the easiest way to make sure I'm being transparent and everyone can see them. If you ever want a copy or to just double check that I'm doing them, let me know. And then the last thing is city council stuff. So the second response stuff, I think some of you were at the meeting. I think Senator Feinman, Senator Quinn will probably talk about it later. But we're keeping our eye on that and seeing how we can organize in the future once and if the bill passes. Also, same thing with smoking and the multi-unit housing ordinances. Cool. Yes.
Yeah, thanks again for coming. Two things really quick. About the Telegraph, I think that's a cool idea. That's very nice of the owners, and that'd like definitely bring a lot of like energy back to Telegraph. Just a general complaint maybe about the Telegraph Street is the Walgreens. There's like half a Walgreens, like not even, it's like a third of a real Walgreens. And like it's like supposed to be a convenient kind of store. It's like not convenient because like the line's long, they don't have anything there. So I don't know if you can like talk to them about like, that's one of the reasons why I feel like Telegraph isn't helpful, because like if you need like a pack of pencils, you have to wait like 45 minutes in line at Walgreens. That's like not convenient for students.
Yeah.
My second thing was about the second response ordinance, so maybe we could talk offline about that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Just as far as the Walgreens goes, there's a lot of empty properties on Telegraph that are potential for like local business development, convenience store development, and they're consistently vacant because of a big tension between the city and one property owner. So I've scheduled a meeting with him, we'll see if he keeps it, to really encourage him to start looking at possibly developing that land, and those empty properties that have been empty for longer than we've all been students here. As far as the Walgreens goes, there were a couple RFPs for like a CVS and one other business to go on Telegraph, and I think those got stalled. But maybe we can talk offline about what we can do, because I agree that Walgreens is expensive and awful.
I read in the Daily Cal about this proposed arch. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that is something that I think it was my first meeting with the mayor. Like I was like, hey, what's your name? And he was like, archway. So he's like crazy and loves this archway idea. And basically it ties into something that I'm really passionate about, which obviously is lighting. And the idea that's been in progress for a really long time is the corner of Telegraph and Dwight is notoriously one unsafe for pedestrians, vehicles, bikers, and generally tends to be just a hotbed for crazy activities. And so what we found is that the regular street lighting hasn't really done much because the culture on that street corner. And a lot of the time students, as far as like walking patterns, will avoid that part of Telegraph and like actually walk around it or find other ways to get home, even if they get that far on Telegraph. So the idea was to create an archway that mirrors the symmetry of Sather Gate to make it kind of like a continuously welcoming street. And originally what I was really pushing for is like Christmas lights on all the trees and that, because I love Christmas lights. But it turns out that there was like some fire restrictions. And so that's how the archway came about. And it's been kind of a joint effort between the city, who are the primary designers, the universities had a lot of input, and then DJ and myself have both been in meetings recently to kind of approve the final design. But it's really environmentally sustainable. The LED lights are like super energy efficient, and it's also, the lights are going to be colored so that if there's like something going on, like it's the Christmas festival or if it's a big cow game, we can change the colors on the lights. So yeah, and of course Hanukkah. Yeah.
So how far down Telegraph are we talking about?
So the light is Telegraph and Dwight, and it's like an archway there. That being said, there's a lot, I mean, an archway is not like the be-all, end-all solution of crime and lighting issues on Telegraph.
I was referring to the space use program.
Oh, the space use program. Not sure. It's probably going to be the businesses that are involved in the Telegraph Business District. So it's actually partly Bancroft. And I can get you a map of the businesses that are included, but part of Bancroft and then a significant way down Telegraph.
Are they just mostly restaurants?
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
You mentioned something about some of the businesses allowing for student groups that are rent out the space or at a discounted rate. Like, which businesses are you talking about? You talking about all of them on Telegraph? I think you are, but which ones can you mention a few names?
Yeah, so the big champion of this initiative is Cafe Med, and Cafe Med is the inventor of the cafe latte, and also a really big local business in Berkeley. They have a lot of history, and they've seen a significant drop in students at the cafe, and so they're interested in finding new ways to revitalize student participation. And the owner of Cafe Med is also an executive member of the business district, the Telegraph Business District. So he very personally knows all of the food and restaurant owners in that area. So from what he's heard, they're really interested in getting students, and so a majority of them are probably open to it, but if you have specific businesses that you think present good opportunities, feel free to come talk to me about it.
I guess I'll follow up on that, like by, I know it's not like a timeline now, but by when, or do you see that sort of going into process or implementing?
Yeah, I can tell you where we are in the process now. So I've been meeting with the business district pretty frequently to talk about how we can work together and what we disagree on, which there's a lot of both. And right now, we've created the form for the businesses to fill out if they're interested. So it's both online and a physical form, and it just says, your name, contact, how much space you'd be willing to provide, what hours, at what price, what food you'd be able to cater. So once we have that database set up, and we can either put that on the EAVP website or the ASUC website or CalLink, then students can start reaching out and using that space.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my guess is like a month out, maybe, if that.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Let's welcome up our student advocate.
Hello. So I apologize, but I didn't make the CalLink submission deadline this week, so my report is not in your binders, but I did send it out right before this meeting, so if you have electronics or whatever to look at it, that would be helpful. So with that in mind, I will take a little bit more time than usual. I will take a little bit more time than usual today to give updates. One of the items that we did in the past week was we held a caseworker training in mediation, which was led by the ombudsperson, Marcia G. Riley. That was a really great opportunity. She put on a great presentation, and the caseworkers participated in experiential activities to practice some of the mediation techniques we were taught about. Unfortunately, Professor Julie Shackford Bradley, who runs the Restorative Justice Center, wasn't able to be there, but we expect to continue collaborating with her in the future. CACSIF, the students on CACSIF met last week to discuss and rank the proposals that came in. Rankings are due tomorrow, and the full meeting of the meeting of the full committee is on November 5th. So we'll actually be starting to make decisions on the proposals for this cycle at that time. A conduct code revision committee meeting took place this past Friday, and one of the big issues was that the Center for Student Conduct requested that the timeline for their investigation be extended from 7 days to 15 days. Our kind of pushback on this was that more information be included in the alleged violation letters that are sent out to students, so they have a better idea of what they're being called in for and a better idea of the facts that resulted in that. We met with a few members of the Grievance Procedure Revision Committee, specifically David Robinson from the Office of Legal Affairs and Felicia Lee. And this was to discuss the grievance procedure and specific aspects of it. In particular, we want to make sure that there will be student input in the complaint resolution officer selection process in the future. As it stands at the moment, when grievances come through the grievance procedure, they are passed on to an investigator called a CRO, who students have no input in choosing, and who could be anyone, effectively anyone in the administration, depending on who's available. So we are pushing to make sure that students have a chance to kind of vet people as we add them to the bench of folks that can handle those issues. We also want to include language in the policy that will clarify the explicit right of the grievant and the opposing party to request a meeting with the CRO individually. So as it stands, there is an opportunity for the CRO has to ask both parties if they wish to participate in an informal mediation, but say that your counterparty doesn't want to participate, but you still want a chance to get face time through this grievance process. So we're trying to add language that would make sure that that safeguard is there. Also met with Hallie Hunt, who's the director of the Center for Student Conduct, this Monday. The Center for Student Conduct is going through some staffing changes. In particular, they are adding another conduct officer, and SAO will likely have 2 representatives on the committee, on the hiring and search committee. Hallie also agreed to put us in touch with the head of the DSP program, and in particular, the reasoning for this is that in some of our cases, we assist students who are part of DSP, and those students are paired with a special DSP caseworker that assists them in various issues. So establishing partnerships with those caseworkers and working with them in the future will help us handle those cases as they go through the Center for Student Conduct. Hallie mentioned that alcohol cases are continuing to pour in at a pretty much unprecedented rate, and also pointed out that, as we've heard from other folks, Alta Bates was upset about the high number of emergency room visits from students, and that this was potentially forcing them to turn away other individuals who are in critical condition. The last item here is I just wanted to give you all a brief update on bank consolidation. So the last meeting of this committee was on this Tuesday, and they set a kind of pretty strict timeline moving forward. The RFP was actually supposed to go out today, but they pushed back on the deadline. As it stands, the next meeting of the committee will be on November 5th, and a first draft of the RFP will be kind of released and discussed on November 8th. The final draft will be released on November 15th, and there will be a public comment period from November 18th through 22nd, which is really when I would ask that you all direct your feedback on that RFP to Risha Ahuja, who's sitting on the committee. And the hope is to get a RFP out by the end of November. And that's all. Does anybody have questions?
Questions for our student advocate, Senator Woche?
Just had a question in terms of the updates for students who may have dealt with the blackout issue. Have you, like how cases have been on that aspect? If you've had any successful cases, et cetera, et cetera?
So I'll say that we are still working with students who were impacted by that, but I do not want to speak more on that once again for the sake of confidentiality.
Have you received more cases from last week? I know you said last week you said you had about 5 or so.
Yes. So some of those issues were just students who wanted to bring it to our attention, but didn't necessarily want to push forward in any official fashion. But we are still, talking with students that have kind of more pressing and maybe long-term concerns.
And the last question I had on that is, because I know the chancellor received or disseminated a message about possibly having makeup exams during the Dead Week time period or so.
So you're talking about what Rishi mentioned last week?
No, there's a message that the chancellor sent out in an email.
So the message that was sent out was in relation to the RRR Week guidelines. And the RRR Week guidelines state that faculty are not to introduce any new material during RRR Week. The message that was sent out was related to that in that because we effectively missed a day of instruction for some classes because of the blackout, this is a one-time exception to the RRR Week guidelines in that at one session during RRR Week, faculty who had to skip their classes or not have class during the blackout week can introduce new material in one session during RRR Week. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions for our student advocate? All right, if there are none, I'd like to welcome up our president for her report.
Hi, Senators. So similarly as our student advocate, I also didn't turn in my report on time. It completely slipped my mind this week, but I emailed it to you as well. So couple things. So last week, the CACSIF students met for a subcommittee meeting to go over proposals, and that's the reason why I wasn't here, and I had Austin do my exec report. We had Lower Sproul furniture stakeholder meetings last Tuesday and Wednesday from 9 to 6. We were in Anthony Hall just meeting with stakeholders after every single hour for 2 days straight. So we were able to get some more input on the interior designs and furniture selections that we've been making for the spaces in New Eshelman. Last week was also the reopening of the Northwest Staircase. It's really, really beautiful, and I'm really excited about it. If you haven't gone by over there yet, please go check it out in Lower Sproul. The SHIP forum, the SHIP student forum went really well. There were a lot of grad students out there last week, yesterday? Yesterday. Please tell your constituents and communities to come out to next week's forum if they missed yesterday's, which is next Wednesday on November 6th from 12 to 1:30 in Anna Head. Chancellor Dirks' fireside chat with the undocumented community was on Monday this week. It was a really good conversation for the most part, and I'm pretty hopeful that he will continue the work that previous Chancellor Bergenow did for the undocumented community. Also had a student tech fee discussion meeting yesterday. We're still trying to figure out the funding model because we need to negotiate with Adobe and Microsoft to see how cheap we can get the software packages for students and model that into the fee. Along with the whole concept of having additional money incorporated into that fee, so that way we can have a student committee look over that and kind of be modeled after CACSIF, and students that have technology proposals can apply to it. I previously mentioned this before in a past exec report. Another update is that we're still also considering doing an ASUC fee to add on to the current fee that we have now. So if you have any questions or you want to get more involved about the discussions and how that's going to be modeled, please let me know. And then I also met with Felicia Lee today to talk about the campus visit with President Napolitano. No details are really set in stone, and we still haven't received our rescheduled campus date yet. So everything is still very largely unknown and not solidified. We also had the first UC Berkeley Title IX Compliance Advisory Committee meeting today, and so that was really exciting for me. This is going to really be the committee that does a lot of long-term policy overhaul when it comes to handling sexual assault cases on campus, and also just other sex discrimination issues that students face. And lastly, the Cal Consent Campaign, as you all know, was started or kicked off on Friday last week. On the eve of Halloween, please have a safe Halloween night. And remember the Cal Consent Campaign as you go out, if you are going to go out. Try to really push in terms of social media for that over the next 24 hours to really get the message out and get folks aware. And this isn't going to be the end of it. This is just like the Halloween edition of the Cal Consent Campaign. We're going to continue to move forward. If you come from a community that wants to be featured in the Cal Consent Campaign, the office is more than willing and open to really do that and feature different communities within it. We floated around different ideas, like doing an athletes for consent campaign and staff for consent campaign, or other things. And we can do like an ASUC elected officials for consent campaign. So everything at this point now is all about conversations and really seeking student input of what you all want to see next from the Cal Consent campaign. So please continue to publicize it. Thank you for your support thus far, and let me know if you have any feedback for it or want to see something different or more from it moving forward. Also, my office's 5K walk run for raising funds for Baywar, Bay Area Women Against Rape, is this Sunday at 9 a.m. We're going to meet on Sproul. You register at tinyurl.com/5kbaywar, and it's only $5 per participant. Please donate if you can't make it, and if you can make it, then come participate. It'll be a lot of fun. We're also going to kick off some other social media campaigns that we're going to be working on at the 5K run. So stay tuned. More to come. That's all I have.
Senator Feynman?
Thanks again for coming. I have two really quick questions. I think I missed it, but where can we find the information about the tech grant or the startup grant? The one you're talking about just a minute ago.
It's not a grant. It's a fee proposal for this year's elections. So there's two proposed. There's been conversations about two different fees. One as an ASUC fee that I've been talking about with Nolan, and then the GA president and GA vice president, about whether or not we want to introduce another fee to go towards the ASUC, so that way we can have more student group funding and ASUC programming. And then the student tech fee is aimed towards funding for software, because our Adobe contract ends this year.
Yeah.
And so it would go towards being able to have students download Adobe and Microsoft packages the way we have been for the last 2 or 3 years, but the funding is expiring this year, so that's why they want to introduce the student tech fee, and we're modeling it after University of Washington's student tech fee, which they have like the centralized student-ran body, which allocates money out to different technology proposals. So similar to CACSIF, right? There's a pool of money and you can apply for it to fund your different student-initiated projects. The student tech fee would pull together a pot of money that departments and students can apply to do technology initiated projects.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And also really quickly about the consent campaign. I understand that there were flyers and posters being distributed to different groups on campus. And I had a conversation with Alana Baum, and she said that they weren't giving them to basically she said that they weren't giving them to people in fraternities, and I was wondering if you could talk to why that was.
So our feedback from brothers within fraternities that folks from my staff know was that we just shouldn't, because they're just going to get ripped down. So we were just told, unless you can find someone who can really safeguard it or really put it on their specific door or something, that it was risky to put it within a frat house, just because in fear of it just being ripped down, because that was the feedback we were getting if we were to do that. So
I know, just as a follow-up on that, I ran into someone who lives at Castro while I was walking here, and she was distributing those posters at fraternity houses.
Yeah, so that was the initial thing. Like, that was from the initial, like, the day it launched. We had people who were, like, committed point people from the co-ops and sorority houses and the residence halls, but it was, like, we had a lot of trouble getting different, like, fraternity brothers to commit to, like, taking posters and putting them in their house.
I just find it like a little bit like, I don't know, a little bit problematic when like they're just saying that like, oh, no one in fraternities would care is what the kind of response I got, and I just feel like that's like kind of generalizing like my community, because we have one up in our house, and I'm proud to say that like our brothers have seen it and respected it. So I understand that maybe like there's some conversations that were had, but I think that when you have the person like running the campaign saying like, oh, we're not giving to fraternities because they're going to pull it down right away, I think that's like a little bit of a generalization.
That's the feedback that my staff had gotten directly from other fraternity brothers, so I don't know if it's necessarily, like, we're not generalizing fraternities as a whole, because like you said, there were some brothers from different fraternities that were willing to put it up in the house, but from other ones, we were, like, that's directly what the feedback was from different brothers. So if anything, that's an internal conversation that fraternity houses need to have about who is the, like, who can officially speak on behalf of doing that, because as far, like, I didn't personally have conversations with fraternity brothers, but that was the feedback that my staff members got who were in charge of, like, issuing out the posters and stuff. And I'm pretty sure that some interns were involved also, so it might have just been, like, the type of conversation that was had or how it was presented. So I don't think it's necessarily targeting, like, and saying that, like, that fraternity or whatever, that they don't care and that it's trying to generalize it, but I think it was just the specific people that were being talked to.
So we have about 6 seconds left. Any other questions? All right, thanks so much. Let's welcome up our last executive report for the evening from the Academic Affairs Vice President's Office.
Hello, I'm Andreas Lazarus, Chief of Staff for the AAVP. So to begin with, I have a few requests. I sent out an email with all this information, and thank you to those who responded. But we still do have openings for several scholarship evaluation committees. One of them being the RISE Scholarship, which is Removing Impediments to Students' Education, which is a scholarship geared toward AB 540 and undocumented students. So if you do have any interest in serving on that committee, which is made up of 4 senators, which is responsible essentially for reviewing applications and also for setting and modifying an existing rubric through which decisions and basically applications are evaluated. We also have a scholarship committee for the textbook scholarship. And I also sent out an email regarding service as a representative on SACU, which is the Student Advisory Committee on Undergraduate Education. And we've already appointed one senator who was interested. And so if anyone else in the room is interested and has the ability to serve for 2 years, so either if you're not a senior or if you're planning on being a super senior, then the term starts this semester and will extend for 2 years. So if you have any interest in any of those committees, please do send me an email at AAVP Chief. You should be able to find the email in your inbox. So this past week, the AAVP had its standing meetings with the GA, the Campus Affairs Vice President, as well as with Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost, George Breslauer. And so things discussed there, one of the big action items was a follow-up and basically continuation of the saga of contextual grading with Bob Jacobson, who is previous chair of the Academic Senate and current Dean of Advising. I also attended SHAC, which is the Student Health Advisory Committee, and in light of the recent actions on sexual violence and through the Cal Consent campaign, we had a lot of discussions surrounding student sexual wellness and sexual violence, as well as discussions regarding possible collaboration between the ASUC, CalSO, and the residence halls regarding a training on basically an institutionalized training within these programs or discussion-based training within these programs regarding issues like sexual violence and sexual health. Also, there was a meeting last week that I took part in with Senator Upadhyayula and also with Sam Fishman, who is a representative from the Student Advocate's Office, regarding, which was a continuation of an ASUC and Student Advocate's Office advising working group. And we met with the Advising Council Implementation Manager, Rebecca Miller, and discussed essentially the framework of that advising will be restructured within. And one of the major outcomes of this meeting were that the AVP Director of Advising and Counseling will attend Student Information Services meetings weekly, and I understand there are several, I think 2 senators in this room who attend these meetings as well. But this is another way to maintain ASUC executive involvement in Student Information Services restructuring. Also, one of the outcomes was to have a meeting with Bob Jacobson, who is the current Executive Dean of Advising, to advocate for a Student Advisory Committee to the Executive Dean of Advising Services, which is essentially a way to maintain ASUC and student roles within this restructuring of advising, but on behalf of the dean, and not necessarily just within the advising framework of the advising council. Also, continuing a project that was begun last semester, we'll be meeting with the Office of Planning and Analysis, which was an office that we had been working with last year, which is in charge essentially of the large survey UCUES that we receive every couple of years. And the discussion is centered around combining existing OPA data with the new GA and CSF survey that went out that had several advising focused questions, and basically creating a student report on advising out of the AABP office, as well as creating a new set of UQ's question for the upcoming UQ survey regarding advising services. Additionally, there will be a meeting with Michelle Rabkin and Maura Nolan of Berkeley Connect, which is a program, I don't know who's familiar with it, but it's similar to the UGMP program, which is offered out of the AVP, and also GIGS, which is getting into graduate school, which is offered through the Office of Inclusion, Diversity, I'm sorry, that was, and so this will be a conversation regarding the integration of these services and seeing how the ASUC can integrate itself into these services that have an existing infrastructure and also campus funding. And this is basically based on a model of graduate mentorship of undergraduate students. Additionally, one issue that seems to have been coming up is transparency within academic senate committees, and I believe that's been brought up by a few senators in the past couple of weeks. And so last year, fall semester, I began a project which was the ASUC, the Campus Committee's website, which is essentially a project between me and the previous CAVP, Carl Nadler, within the GA, to create a website which basically is a student resource where all committee information is aggregated. And this is academic senate information and also administrative committees information. And so all information regarding chairs, regarding student and chair-approved summaries, student-written and chair-approved summaries, is on this website. So the website currently is still in its test domain name. So it's at testcommittees.pantheon.berkeley.edu. But I met with the GA technology manager last week regarding making this live and hosting on the ASUC server. So that you can visit the website. It's in the report that you received from me, and you can basically see what state it is in now, which is nearly complete. The only thing we're waiting on is a domain name, and so basically this will function as the primary resource for students on campus who need information on campus committees that are appointed through the AAVP and through the CAVP, and so these will also include student-written summaries, which are approved by the Academic Senate Admin Committee chairs, which is a method of kind of bypassing the very long process of minute approval, the formal minute approval process taken by committee chairs, and having a student-written summary that can be turned around within 3 days of the meeting and posted online for public use. Regarding grants, There will be a meeting regarding a possible rubric for allocation, and this is in an attempt to maintain transparency in terms of how allocations are made and why certain requests are not funded and why certain requests are. And so this might take the form of a bylaw revision, which will require incoming AAVPs to either use a specific set of a specific guideline for how to approve requests, or to require a guideline that's written through a formal evaluation process, depending on who the AAVP and their staff is. Additionally, there has been a working group meeting between the AAVP and the Office of the President, which is regarding admissions policy, and major products that have come out of this are a reassessment process, which is basically a reassessment of a booklet that's been created within the Bridges space and working with the Bridges space to possibly create a reassessment process after the 2012 admissions policy, and to reassess annually how admissions policy has changed and how this pamphlet and this informational resource pamphlet also needs to be modified. Also, on Tuesday, November 19th, there's a tentative event at the Multicultural Community Center from 6:30 to 7:30, which is a conversation with admissions, on admissions, on how admissions affects people of color, with a goal of 50 current students in the audience. And additionally, there have been, through multiple conversations, it seems that there is an interest in projects regarding CALSO, and one of the, in terms of how to restructure CALSO, and in terms of how to integrate certain programs and certain initiatives within the format of CALSO. Sorry. And one of the projects that's coming out of the AUP office is possibly an advisory committee to CALSO, because CALSO has received and basically has hired a new director, co-director, and assistant director, and they're from individuals in our office who also work with the CALSO program. They're prepared to make infrastructural and service changes. So creating an advisory group and an advisory committee to CALSO can integrate all ASUC-related projects that have to do with CALSO into one framework and one advisory committee, so that they can be implemented in a cohesive way, as opposed to having all of the individual CALSO-themed projects within the ASUC scattered and not combining resources. And finally, there is within the services department a finals de-stress week that is in the works.
Just as a heads up, there are about 10 seconds left.
Okay.
I move to extend time by 3 minutes.
All right, there's been a motion. It's been seconded. Any opposition? Abstentions? Motion carries. Time has been extended by 3 minutes.
Okay. And so this finals de-stress week is essentially it will take place tentatively between December 2nd and December 6th. And each day will be focused on a different aspect of wellness and stress management during the final season. And so this will be combined with giveaways, for instance, green books and Scantrons, which are academic resources that you get to a final, you get to a midterm, and you realize you don't have. And so these are things that the AVP will essentially subsidize for students by providing them for them. Additionally, there will be a time management night that's sponsored by the TANG and the SLC, because SLC hosts workshops regarding time management, and TANG also hosts career and time management and workflow workshops. Also, this will have kind of an academic bend, in the sense that a sleep event will take place where the psychology of sleep professor Matthew Walker will also be providing a lecture and kind of an informational session regarding the biology of sleep. And so this is essentially the breakdown of this finals de-stress week. And also regarding grants, all grants have met with their Senate committees except for one, which is the multicultural fund. And so most of these grants have had at least one allocation meeting. And as far as numbers are concerned, applications that have been received are 18 for the Educational Enhancement Fund, 8 for the Intellectual Community Fund, 8 for the Multicultural Fund, 4 for the Public Service Fund, and 38 for the Academic Opportunity Fund. And applicants who have been processed are Educational Enhancement 18, ICF 4, Multicultural 0, PSF Public Service 3, and Academic Opportunity 9. So there are still many scholarships that still, or many grant applications that still need to be processed. But as Senate committees meet, they'll work through all of these applications. And that covers it.
Okay, there are 50 seconds left for questions.
I move to extend time by 5 minutes.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I withdraw my motion. I move to extend time by 3 minutes.
There's been a motion.
Second.
It's been seconded. Are there any opposed to the motion? Any abstentions? Okay, before we start the timer, I'll just note both for senators and for our presenter and for any executives who are here. We do have written reports. Please be comprehensive in the written reports so that we're not extending time multiple times during the Senate meeting. Most executive officers have a lot of stuff that happens during the week, and part of the reason why we set up the system of doing written reports is so the senators don't have to furiously take notes while you're talking, and so that there's a written record of what you're saying that the senators can have even after you leave. And so generally, if we just use this for highlights, that's preferable. But let's start the 3 minutes then for questions. I saw Senator Woche and Senator Upadilla.
I was just going to follow up on the question about book grants. I know you've sent multiple emails. Thanks for keeping us very updated about that. But just, yeah, just curious about that. About this, I mean this textbook scholarship program. I don't know why I said book grants. Yeah.
So what's your specific question?
So I was just going to ask, like, what's the follow-up on in terms of that? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the committee needs 4 senators. So we have 3 individuals who are interested. So I'm waiting for the 4th person. So if there is a 4th person, please contact me, and then we'll meet as a unit, and then we'll discuss basically what the breakdown is between now and the end of the semester, and also until the end of the year when the scholarship is allocated. So I'm hoping within the next week we can get that completely filled with 1 other person. So if you have any inclination, email me.
Senator Upadilla?
So first, thank you for the grants breakdown. That was really appreciated. Also, in terms of the finals de-stress week, I don't know if this is possible, but if you could get like puppies or something, because I know that there have been studies that have proven that those are like very good at de-stressing college students. And I don't know if you could just ask people to like donate puppies for the day. I just think that would be a really good idea. Also, in terms of SACU, what exactly is the purview of that committee?
I can't hear you.
In terms of SACU, what is the purview of that committee?
So basically, it's the Advisory Committee on Undergraduate Education. So it's a very general committee in that sense, but I mean, it does touch on basically any issue that you believe is relevant to undergraduate curricula, and things like advising services do come up in there, and things like basically course requirements, breadth requirements, anything that falls under the umbrella of undergraduate education.
I'd be interested, and I'll send you an email.
Okay, yeah, so send me an email, and then we can set that up.
Senator Feinman?
Yeah, I'll ask quickly. Just to clarify, when we talked about the RRR week, the only classes that were directly affected by the explosion and the aftermath are allowed to reschedule classes, right? Not like only classes that were canceled, so only classes in those like 10 buildings, or is it like any teacher who just like wants an extra class can do it during that week based on the stipulation that, classes were canceled?
I believe it was only the classes that were affected, but the event does not necessarily address those classes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any last questions? All right, if there are none, we'll move on then to appointments.
Thank you.
So for special committees, please feel free to announce new appointments if you've chosen any during your committee reports. Are there any special committee appointees that were announced last week that need to be approved this week? Senator Mohabbat?
So last week I brought up for fundraising director, Melissa Carlson. I believe she's here if she wants to come. Hi, Melissa. Do you want to come up to the mic over there and just like introduce yourself for a second? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Melissa Carlson. I'm a junior here at Cal. I actually transferred here last semester from Mills College. It's an all-women's school in Oakland. And yeah, I'm excited to join the ASUC. I'm a political science major with a German minor, and that's all.
Thank you. Any questions for our nominee? All right, great, thank you. Before we move on to other appointments.
No, I have one more.
Oh, we can confirm her though.
Confirm her. My bad.
Yeah. So since it has passed the week announcement, she's now able to be confirmed. Do I have a motion to confirm Melissa Carlson? It has been moved and seconded. we've become so efficient that we're talking at the same time and be able to make motions. So, are there any opposed to the motion? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. Congratulations.
And then for Greek Affairs Officer, we have Tatum Wheeler. Tatum, if you want to come up and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tatum Wheeler. I'm a second year. I'm also a political science major, and I'm really excited to start this position and find out more about the ASUC. Thank you.
Any questions for our nominee? All right, if there are none, I need a motion to approve Tatum Wheeler as our Greek Affairs Officer. Wait, we need a motion first.
No, they did.
I second. Speak audibly, please. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Are there any opposed to the motion? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. Congratulations. Special committee chairs, are there any other appointees that were announced last week and need to be confirmed this week? So if there are none, we'll move on into our one special order for the evening on developing campus emergency plans and procedures.
Hi, Senators. So thank you for approving the special order last week. As I mentioned before, I was going to bring in folks from Emergency Response on Campus to talk to you all about what happened from the explosion a couple weeks back. Still going through a lot of review processes and the motions for after everything that happened. So I'm going to leave it up to Mark and the team to talk to you all. It's going to be more of a free-flowing discussion and getting a lot of your feedback. So please stay engaged and please pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you, President Pepito, and in fact, the whole Senate body here. I appreciate very much the opportunity to come and have a two-way exchange, actually, on the events of just a month ago tonight, as a matter of fact, and our campus emergency management program, which has been a focus of executives now, a special focus of campus executives for about 2 years. And before we get into the specifics of the power outage, which is our main purpose tonight, and our main purpose actually is to hear from you as representatives of the student body on the student perspective and experience around the power outage and explosion. Before we get into that exchange of information, we'd like to take like 10 minutes to give you a little overview of some of the enhancements that are planned and have been planned for a couple years around the emergency management program. And I'm here with a couple colleagues tonight. I'll mention right away so I don't forget later. Amina Asefa is the manager of the Office of Emergency Management. We appreciate your applause. And Steve Sutton is an assistant vice chancellor for student development, the RSSP. I appreciate Steve being here because he doesn't even work in our office, but he is interested in the student perspective. I know that, and so he wanted to make a point to be here. And in the back of the room, we have John Ruiz, who is also with the Office of Emergency Management. So as I mentioned, for about 2 years now, campus executives have had a special focus on the campus emergency management program. There's been an emergency management program on campus for many years, an emergency operations plan, largely centered around the fact that we know that there's a major earthquake coming. We just don't know when it's going to hit. But there's a lot of planning, preparation to do in that way. And a couple years ago, it was recognized there were some ways that that program could be taken to the next level. And so about within the last year or so, Amina Asefa was the principal author of a strategic plan. This happens to be the cover of that plan that talked about many enhancements to the program. The plan is found on the web, and I'm sure she'll tell you exactly where in a minute. But July of last year, one of the major changes that was put in place was the merger of two formerly separate offices. There had been a campus Office of Emergency Preparedness, happened to be aligned with the police department, and its mission was focused on helping the campus as a whole prepare for campus or regional disasters such as a major earthquake. Separately, and reporting to a different executive on campus, was a small Office of Continuity Planning, and that, it's spelled right now, okay. It was spelled planing earlier this evening. And that office was focused on helping individual departments prepare to continue their missions in the event of some impact, like a local power outage in their own building, or a campus power outage, campus-wide, or a flood in their building, some way that that department could continue its mission. So you can see right away how these two missions are closely aligned, and some of the executives said, why do we have two separate offices reporting elsewhere? Let's merge them together. And so that's what happened July of last year. It was created the Office of Emergency Management, which handles both functions now, headed up again by Amina, and reporting to me, my name is Mark Freiberg. I'm the Executive Director of Environment, Health and Safety, and Emergency Management. So the office is small. We've got 3 people in it now. We're hiring a 4th at this point. Obviously, these 3 people don't do all the emergency preparations for campus. The Office of Emergency Management is a coordination body to work with various units on campus, such as Steve's residential and student service programs, to deal, in their case, with housing. How will we house people after the earthquake? What if some of the buildings are not safe to occupy, and so on? Or we work with physical plant on electrical safety issues. Or we work with the Tang Center, University Health Service, to make sure that there's capability for emergency medical support, and so on. So the Office of Emergency Management is a small coordination group. I want to say the next thing we did was hire these excellent people into these roles who had a lot of emergency management experience. So Amina Asefa herself, I'll tell you, has worked in both New York City and in the state of Louisiana, both of which face a lot of emergency conditions all the time. She has in fact worked as an emergency planner through some 30 different emergency activations, including an earthquake, avian flu, heat waves, blizzards, transit strikes, and several hurricanes, 5 altogether. John Ruiz, who I introduced in the back of the room, and who is going to be taking notes about your comments and your perspective around this, comes to UC Berkeley and has within the last year, having come from the American Red Cross, where he was the regional deputy director of emergency services for 7 years, and he has dealt with Hurricanes Irene, Isaac, and Sandy, amongst his other experience. So we have real emergency management staff here, and I'm pleased to turn it over to Amina to talk more about program enhancements, and then we'll get into the specifics of the recent event.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the key strategic initiatives that are in the Emergency Management Strategic Plan. You guys can find it on our website if you're interested in reading the entire document at oem.berkeley.edu. The entire document contains 37 initiatives, including an implementation plan. So if you would like to read it and then provide any feedback or comment, we're happy to hear that. I'm going to talk very briefly about 4 initiatives, and that's 4 out of 37. So this is really just a broad overview. Some of the key things that we're working on is relocating and enhancing our campus emergency operations center. We call that the EOC, and it was previously located in Barrows Hall. We moved it to Warren Hall, and then we're working to outfit it with all the infrastructure that it needs to function as an emergency operations center. So an EOC is really a coordination hub during emergency. It manages and coordinates the emergency response operations. Another key initiative is the campus stockpile of food and water. So we currently don't have a dedicated campus stockpile, and it's something that we're working hard with RSSP, Student Affairs, and the police department to procure for the campus. And we'd like to initially be able to support 20,000 people for 3 days on the campus. So it's a lot of food and water. And the other one is EM Advisory Committee. So this advisory committee would help develop, implement, and enhance the emergency management program. And it would consist of faculty, staff, and students. So we're already talking to DJ about maybe she's the representative on that for the students. But we're happy to have obviously more than one student contributing to that advisory committee. And that has yet to be formed, so it's an important initiative that we're addressing in this coming year. And the last one is just to continue preparedness outreach. You're only prepared as a community as the individual community members are prepared. And so we really need to work to make sure everyone understands how they individually can prepare themselves for an emergency. And so that's something that we're partnering with the Red Cross Club at Cal to do outreach to the dorms, to the co-ops, and the Greeks around individual preparedness. So that's the strategic plan. We're really here to talk about recent events on campus in the last month that have kind of put a spotlight on emergency preparedness and emergency management. So the first is the September 30th campus power outage and electrical vault explosion. That event activated our Emergency Operations Center in Warren Hall. It also activated in some limited fashion the crisis management team, which is a group made up of senior leadership on campus, members of the Chancellor's Cabinet. There was an incident command post set up at the base of the Campanile. And in the course of the events, 4 Warn Me messages were sent out. We used our mass notification system, Warn Me, and also our alert notification system, the siren system, to tell people to evacuate the campus. We're going to talk about all this in depth, and this is really going to be a conversation. I just wanted to provide that overview. October 28th, Monday, there was a suspicious package on near campus, and that was an event that also activated our mass notification system, and 2 warnings were issued. One was the stating stay away from the area, and the second one was giving the all clear. So before I kind of turn it over to you guys to kind of provide us feedback, I wanted to show you just what the campus emergency response structure looks like. So we're going to start at the top. So at the top you have the crisis, what we call the crisis management team. And that is a policy level group that consists of members of the Chancellor's Cabinet. They're standing members, and then there is ad hoc members that are added based on whatever incident is occurring. And that group deals with policy issues so that come out of the emergency. And one of those policy issues, for instance, is class cancellation. That's the group that will be dealing with and making that decision of whether classes are canceled, whether the campus is closed. Those kind of high-level decisions are coming out of that group. Below that, we have the management level. That happens within the Emergency Operations Center on campus. And then they work with those lower groups. So they work with the operations area that could be in the EOC or could also be across campus in what we call departmental operations centers. But those are the areas of campus that do things. They house students, or they work on the high voltage team, and those are the operations level. And below that is the field level. Those are your first responders. So during the power outage, usually the police are always our first responders on campus, but we also have Berkeley Fire Department that could be first responders on campus. And so those goldy kind of colored boxes, those are all response level, and then above it at the crisis management team level, that's the kind of continuity policy decision level. That just gives you some context for the kind of discussion we're going to have. So we're going to focus on the power outage. We've had a number of debriefs across campus already, and this gives you a sense of the number of them. We've had a debrief with the emergency operations staff, with the crisis management team. We had 3 debriefs with building coordinators. There's been internal debriefs within public affairs, student affairs, the police department, EH&S, and disability student services. And so we're here now to get the student perspective and get feedback. All of this information that we're collecting across campus, it's all going into an after action report that my office is working on and will issue, and you guys will get a copy. That will identify the strengths, the areas of improvement, and really the most important of after action is the corrective action. What do we need to get better? And so in that document, you'll see action items, and then they'll be assigned to a responsible unit on campus. And so who has ownership over these action items? And we'll be issuing quarterly reports from our office that updates the campus. It'll be public on our website of the status of those action items. What progress have we made on these things that we have identified that elevate the state of readiness on the campus? And the information that you provide us today will go into that document. This is my last slide before you guys get to talk. So some of the input from the debriefs that specifically connects with students is communication. We're getting a lot of feedback around communication and some of the areas that we can improve upon as a campus in terms of communicating. And one of the big ones is Warn Me. Some of the input that we've gotten from the debriefs you can see up there, but that the message content was unclear and somewhat confusing for people, that there was never an all-clear message issued that said that, the event is over in terms of Warn Me, and you can find additional information somewhere else. And then also, people didn't get the Warn Me, and some of that's user error in terms of not signing up correctly, but some of that also is people are signed up correctly and they're still not getting it. And that's a very important issue that we are bringing to the vendor to understand why, if people are signed up correctly, why aren't they getting these Warn Me messages? And another issue that came up around communication was just the website. The website was not updated frequently enough. There was a big gap, especially on the overnight, when there was no updates to the website at all. So that's all I have. This is our contact information, but really we wanted this to be a conversation where we heard from you and got some feedback and some comments around from students on what they think that if there were strengths or areas of improvement that the campus can work on to be better prepared and to elevate the state of readiness on campus.
All right, so thank you so much for that. We're going to take a brief pause while Mr. Litwack changes the batteries on his recorder. During this brief pause, I'll also take a moment to announce to audience members who've come to join us that if anyone's interested in commenting on part of the agenda, this is really awkward because I can't turn around and speak into the microphone. If there is anybody who'd like to make a public comment, we have a table over here with public comment cards. If you just jot that down and let us know what you want to comment on, we will call you up when we're talking about that so that we can be on the same page. We're almost ready. Okay. Should we start with a speakers list? Is there anybody who has questions right now? Okay, so we'll do Senator Woche. Everyone else can meditate and think about your comments. All right, so Senator Woche, do you want to start us off?
Are you good? Yeah, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. So I just had a few questions. So first, I'm very happy you all, I guess conceded the fact, in terms of the communication wasn't as disseminated as it should have been. So one thing I was going to suggest, maybe a Facebook page, because I know a lot of students are just on Facebook. And so, like myself personally, I didn't receive the messages, and I know other students who didn't receive it. I was just happened to be fortunate to be a senator, and some of my fellow senators were able to get that information, and they were sending that information to me. So that I would just suggest a Facebook page. But also to really, I think the biggest part for me was the fact about the fact that we were having a decision made by 5 a.m. I don't know if that happened, if you can help me understand why that decision was made that way, because of the fact that many students, for example, don't stay up past maybe midnight or 1 a.m. That's sort of reasonable, but staying to 5:30 a.m., especially if you have a midterm, an exam, especially the fact that a lot of students, first of all, if you stay in the dorms, there's no power there. If you're trying to use the computer, there's no power there. So a lot of students effectively didn't have power from the time of 4:45 p.m. to about 2 a.m. in the morning or so. So just wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, well, that has been recognized as an issue at the crisis management team, that policy level body, and that'll be something that we're helping track. That is one of those policy questions about when. I know there's a policy question about how early can classes be forecast to be canceled and announced and so on. And so that's really an issue for the Provost's office, Provost George Breslauer, and I know it's on his radar screen, but we're going to record that and help make sure that that is brought to attention at the right level. It's not something that we can address because we're not on that policy level, but that is where that happens, and that Provost's office is the one that owns that particular issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think I saw Senator Chung and then Senator Feynman. Okay, so Senator Feynman.
I guess my question is kind of like a question-comment morphed into one. So, especially with things that happen on campus, like with the explosion and the briefcase or whatever the suspect object was, I was wondering in those messages and emails that are being sent out, is it possible to accompany that with a map of where the general locations are, maybe color-coded to what is safe and what is not safe? Because in my experience, I was like walking down Bancroft and I got that email and it said like between Bancroft and Telegraph, and like that's one street corner, but they blocked off an entire street. So if I had seen a map of like where the specific blocked off areas were, I would have been able to like contextualize, oh, that's where I need to stay away from. Especially on campus where like there aren't streets. Really, it's just kind of like near the building that's near Campanile, or it's kind of like a little bit ambiguous. I was wondering if that's possible, because I think that would be helpful for students to like see kind of a grid of like, oh, that's the red zones, don't go there, because that's where there's trouble, or that's where you should stay away.
So there is a limit on WarMe to 140 characters, kind of like a tweet, but we can potentially add a link that you can go to that's on the webpage where it links to a map that you can view from the WarMe. So it's a good suggestion. We'll certainly put that into the after action. And we are working with our vendor and with the police department and public affairs and IS&T to address some of the WarMe issues and to see how we can make it more useful. And that's a good suggestion for that.
Really quick, that's okay, is I know from personal experience, like my parents are quite the worriers, and I was wondering how communication was spread to like guardians, because sometimes like I was like studying for a midterm and I didn't have time to call my mom, and she was like freaking out. Like I checked my phone to like 8 missed calls from her, like, are you okay? Are you know what I mean? And I was just wondering.
Yes.
I know there was publications with the Day of the Cow and things like that, but there was things directly sent towards guardians and parents.
There currently is not. I mean, there is just what's available on the web. Like they can go to the website and look. One of the things we're looking into with WarMe is there a way, we can't put your parent in WarMe, but maybe you can put your parent in WarMe and tell us that you want your parent contacted or included in the WarMe message. Currently, only people in WarMe have berkeley.edu email addresses, and so it's working with the vendor to understand what's the capacity of the system. Is it possible for a student to have 2 additional numbers that they can add that are their parents or whoever they want to contact them? And so we're working on that. It's something that we do hear from students, certainly. And there's also people that are connected to our campus that need to know what's happening on our campus but don't have berkeley.edu emails also. And so they've expressed that to us. And so we are looking and working with our vendor to determine what's the true capacity of the system. And if it can't meet our needs long term, like what can we find a vendor that can?
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Senator Rafi?
One question, first of all, thank you for coming. One question I heard often was whether there are drills that take place for students, for faculty, for staff, and when those take place, if they do happen, and just in general information.
Yeah, several of you, I heard introductions. I'm a second-year student. I'm an 18th year employee, so I can speak to what's happened over the history. We have had earthquake drills that in the past have focused pretty much exclusively on the Emergency Operations Center staff, which is good, but which doesn't engage the majority of the campus. So one of our goals is to, in fact, this is the 4th position that I mentioned we're hiring now. We're hiring a training and exercise coordinator, somebody who specifically will be developing and implementing drills and exercises across the whole campus, because we've recognized that's one place that this program does need to step it up. So that's the honest truth about the past and where our plans are, and we're recruiting right now, in case any of you know, good people who would serve as training and exercise coordinators. We are recruiting.
Senator Mohabbat?
Hi, thank you for being here. So I guess just based on like the lack of like safety and like adequate response, in my opinion, I felt at the time of the explosion, like I realized a group that I got taught CPR from, Berkeley Medical Reserves Corps, I think they were like interested in doing like disaster work. Does that group align with your department? And if so, like, can you speak to your relationship and like what you foresee that relationship being?
Yes, so we just met with the Berkeley Medical Reserve Corps yesterday for update. We've been meeting with them throughout the year. So they do not exist yet as a Berkeley Medical Reserve Corps. They're in the process of getting their application into the state. The Medical Reserve Corps is a state-sponsored entity. They have them all across the country. And so we're working with them. We're actually writing their letter of support to verify to the state that they will be integrated into campus response operations. And they will be integrated through UHS, University Health Services. So UHS is the lead for public health and medical operations on campus during an emergency. And the Medical Reserve Corps fits within that structure as a resource, as an asset that UHS can use on campus. And they can use them as field teams, they may use them as triage, they may use them at first aid stations, but as the lead for public health and medical, UHS makes that decision of how they'll be utilized on campus. And they'll be written into our plans as a response entity on campus.
In the case of like an emergency, like the explosion, like in the future after they become like a state-sponsored group?
An official Medical Reserve Corps.
Yeah, they would be utilized as well?
They would be utilized on our campus. They actually are a state entity, so they can be utilized elsewhere besides our campus. They can be used in the city of Berkeley, or they can be sent, if there's a major earthquake in Southern California, they may be sent down there. So yeah, they will be utilized as they're needed on our campus. And the Medical Reserve Corps, it's primarily made up of students. Once they became a Reserve Corps, that may change. They'll get membership from doctors and nurses. But they're a very important resource for us, and we certainly see it as an asset to our campus to be able to say that we have a Medical Reserve Corps that we've integrated into our campus operations.
Senator Iwoma and then Senator Woche. Actually, wait, Senator Iwoma and Senator Chung. I saw your hand after that.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do y'all ever do any research on like what other schools do on like campus preparedness and like understanding?
That's all we do. Well, we're part of a system, so we just met this month as a system with all 10 campuses, and then I think 3 of the medical centers and A&R. So we meet as a system twice a year, once in June and then once in October. We're on a monthly call for both emergency preparedness and for continuity. So we connect as a system a lot, and I think those are our closest colleagues because there's only a couple of us on this campus that get paid to do this, and our closest colleagues are usually at another campus. Those are the other people that get paid to do that. So we do coordinate with them a lot. Because emergencies don't happen every day, even though they kind of feel like they do in the last 4 weeks, it really is important to learn from others and to take lessons learned from people who've had experiences and who've had something happen on their campus and learn from that and take those best practices and apply it here. So we work as a system, but we also connect with other campuses besides UC's.
Senator Chung?
So I just want to thank you again for being here, and this question is in light of the earthquakes that have happened in the last couple of weeks. So some students have expressed concerns about a lot of Berkeley buildings being seismically unsafe, such as Tolman Hall, and I was wondering if that information is true, and if it is there anything being done to address this issue?
As an 18-year employee, again, I'll say that, in fact, the campus has a program you may have heard of, the SAFER program. And can I remember what that stands for? Seismic Action, I can't. SAFER. It's on the web. And over the years, the campus has put millions and millions of dollars into seismic retrofits or replacements of various buildings, and they have a web information on the web that provides pretty much the latest status on that. And so there is still more work to be done. I can tell you for over the years, the highest priority, the most unsound buildings have been addressed already, and so they're down the priority list of ways. We're not experts in that area. The expertise is at the Facility Services Office under Vice Chancellor Ed Denton. And probably a good contact person there is Christine Schaff, S-H-A-F-F. Does she have a C? Either okay, S-H-A-F-F, Christine Schaff.
Okay, so senators, there are a couple of other hands for questions. We're approaching our 30-minute mark that was allocated for this presentation, but I saw Senators Woche, Truax, and Pandya.
I motion to extend time by 7 minutes.
Okay, there's been a motion.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. The time will be extended by 7 minutes.
Could I ask a question of the group? I'm just curious, we talked about the limitations and problems that we're experiencing right now around Warn Me and our efforts to focus on improving that. Warn Me works best if you go onto the Warn Me website and select as your primary first choice for notification the SMS text. And I wonder, I'd just like to get a sense, how many of you knew that that's the case and how many of you just knew that that was the case, that that's what you should do, is go online and select text? I'm just trying to get a sense how well our outreach has been. So many of you, but not all of you. And I appreciate your honesty around that. We want to do a better job at getting the word out that really, to be effective, people should go online and select that as the option. And if you had specific suggestions for how we can do that more effectively, we'd appreciate it.
Senators Wiltshire and Pandya.
So I was just going to ask, because you mentioned about sort of us, we having no food or water stockpile. Just want to know what the obstacles have been in terms of that, of trying to implement that going forward.
Well, I say we had no dedicated food and water stockpile. So we do have food and water on campus that can be utilized during an emergency because there are some reserves within the dining facilities, within the retail outlets that we can utilize during an emergency and that we would definitely utilize during an emergency. I would say the biggest obstacle or challenge to the stockpile is, getting enough food and water for 20,000 people. That's actually easy. Storing it and finding a place for it is challenging. And so that is our challenge. I'm glad that Steve is here because we're working with RSSP and the police department to find a location at University, the Albany Village, basically, where we can store that large amount of food and water and then be able to not have to cross a bridge to get it over to our campus. And so the intent would be to store most of it there, have a small forward placement of supplies on campus, be able to meet that immediate need, and then bring in the reserve as the emergency goes on.
All right, Senator Pandya.
So this is going back to the earthquakes topic. I'm not sure if this is like under your jurisdiction necessarily, but I think that earthquakes are kind of like a unique situation for California schools especially, and I don't think many students realize how likely an earthquake is and the damage that could be caused by it, and they're not necessarily taking the necessary precautions against that. So I only realized it after taking an earthquakes class what to do in order to prepare for that situation. And so is there any education, more prevention rather than kind of disaster, afterwards, disaster relief programs, but is there more a prevention program prior to that, where it's an education program to educate students about what to do in the case of an earthquake and before an earthquake and that kind of thing?
Yes. So that's our preparedness outreach that we are working on doing in the dorms and the co-ops and the Greeks. We were also at Caltopia giving out information about preparedness. I would agree with you 100%. The students, what I learned was they're woefully unprepared in terms of knowing individually what they should do, knowing to drop, cover, and hold on. I would say most students don't know that that's what they're supposed to do in an earthquake. They don't know to stop, drop, and roll if they're on fire, which is a concern. And so there's lots of areas for us to improve that. And certainly, part of the funnest part of what we do in our office is working with students on this preparedness outreach and finding ways to connect with students. We do have a Facebook page. Our OEM office has their own Facebook page. We do various contests around preparedness. We're doing one tomorrow where you can win a bag full of candy. And so we certainly want to work with students in this important gap. And if we can teach you or anyone in this room or anyone on campus, preparedness tips is something you can take with you for the rest of your life, understanding how to be prepared for an emergency. So yes, it's something that we are working on, and it's a priority of our office.
Senator Lee.
In regards to your concern about Warn Me, I think that you should go through the residence halls first, because I know that I didn't register myself within Warn Me unless I went through Fairfax and was just playing around and kind of clicking around and seeing what was there. And so if during the first week that students are here in residence halls, they move in a little bit earlier and they go through a lot of training programs as well. And so you can just have each resident halls, what are they called? RHAs, RAs, your RAs to like tell the students to register, be sure to go on Fairfax and.
Okay, Senator Wu.
So I remember that flow chart you're showing us earlier. There's the policy team, yeah, that one. So, like, are you all is the EOC the only source of information when it comes to updating what happened to an accident? Like,
Say it again?
So, like, my question is like, what are other sources that students can use to figure out what's going on other than WarMe?
Well, this is just how we organize, so this is not going to tell you kind of the flow of communication and kind of public messaging that we do. So there is WarnMe. That is our mass notification system. That's how we'll push out alerts where we need you to take action because something is happening on campus. There's the campus website, and that would be the primary source of information during an emergency. What we're working with public affairs to do is to actually strip down that website during an emergency, and so all you'll see is what the updates are. You won't be able to apply for admissions, you won't be able to check out other things, but you'll just see the stripped down, this is the latest update in this emergency situation, because some of the feedback we got was that people couldn't find, the updates were on the website, but they couldn't find them because it was like buried in the corner and a little thing you're supposed to click, and if you're not looking for it, you might not find it. So there's the website, there's a 1-800 number that was utilized during the campus power outage. There's also the alert warning system, that's the PA system along with the sirens. And I know Public Affairs has a Facebook page, they have a Twitter account, and they do push out information in that way also.
So that website thing you're saying, is that something new you're implementing?
That is something that is coming out of this power outage. Yeah, it's something that we're working with Public Affairs. A lot of campuses do that already, and this is one of those ways that we learn from other campuses, is they just strip their website of everything, and all you see is that warning message. So if you don't get it on your phone or you hear it, you can go straight to the website and see exactly what that content is. And then also any updates from the emergency get posted there. So you don't have to kind of dig around for it. You just know there's one place I'm going, and that's going to have all the information I need.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, so we have their contact information on the slide. Lizzie and I will make sure to request the PowerPoint so that we can send it all out to you so that you'll have contact information and any reference materials that you need. Let's thank our presenters for coming in today.
Thank you guys very, very much.
So we'll now transition into legislative officer reports. Let's welcome our Attorney General, Kevin Sabo.
Hello. So my report is included this week, which is great, so I'm not trying to read it off the screen of a phone. Not very much going on right now aside from following up on the casework. The Solicitor General and I created a Google Doc file that we're both shared onto, so that way we can exchange information and be on the same page about the different cases that we've received. The one regarding the recruitment policy has sort of been resolved with the individual who filed the complaint. She's okay with everything now, and we're moving forward, and Conrev will be discussing a recruitment policy to codify in the bylaws moving forward, so thank you, Conrev, for that. As far as the grievance regarding the ghost organizations, I have not heard back. So yeah. That's basically it, other than just trying to get the Attorney General's office off the ground with information sharing, with meetings, and just trying to figure out the dynamics of the team and what we're going to do. And we're starting to think the Elections Council Chair's name is Gina. Perfect. So we're going to be meeting with her over the next few weeks to sort of brief on what's going to be happening with the elections that are coming up in the spring. So that's coming down the pike. But other than that, most of our efforts are going to be focused on Conrev and the bylaws overhaul and things like that. So at this point, are there any questions?
Senator Truax?
Yeah, just like out of curiosity, I guess, like who's in your office or how big is your office?
So it's me, the Solicitor General, and an intern that I brought actually from the SSCCC, but she went to the Legislative Department in the EVP's office, but now we brought her to the Attorney General's office. So there are 3 of us. We are small but mighty.
They poached an intern from the EVP office. We're devastated. Other questions for our Attorney General? All right, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
So we're going to come back really briefly to appointments, and then Senator Woche has a request for a special order, but let's bring up our finance officer for his report.
Hello. Hi. So as always, I author Week 9 budget bill, which is in your binder. As an update, if we approve Week 8 budget bill with all the amendments today, then we would have spent about 20% from Senate contingency account and 17% from space reservation account. So that's just an update for the budget. What else? And I updated stop caps, which is kind of an official spending restrictions set by the Finance Committee on the CalLink application, so that if student groups are applying for funding requests, then they would notice that. Yeah, I think that's it. Any questions? Yeah.
Senator Lee?
I've been reached out by multiple business clubs because of the Cal Lodge situation. Did you ever respond to that email?
Yeah, I got your email that you forwarded me. I am trying to set up a meeting with I think her name is Andrea, but I don't know what her position is, but yeah, to talk more about it.
Yeah, I would also encourage anybody who is interested in working on a path forward on the Cal Lodge. EVP Finance is sponsoring a Cal Lodge focus group, just specifically not to talk about the closure that's coming up, but to talk about the long-term vision for the Cal Lodge. So separate from whatever we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Other questions?
And I don't have an office like the Attorney General does, so if any of you know somebody that's would like to help out with the finance of ASUC, you should let me know.
As a note, we will be coming back to you with a sort of proposed moving around reallocation of money so that we have something in the spring to do recruitment with, and so that we can get dentists, interns, among other things.
Yeah.
Senator Woche?
So just clarification, this may also be a question for you too. For SB 37, I know last week we were talking about the bill to close. So first of all, my question was, so did we scrap that aside, or it went to FICOM and it was tabled, et cetera?
Yeah, that report will probably be made during the Finance Committee's report, but it's been tabled right now.
Okay.
Senator Mohabbat will update us.
Cool.
Any questions?
All right, cool.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So, if there are no other legislative officers here, and upon looking around, I don't believe there are, I do want to return really briefly to appointments and announce that President Pepito, if she is still here, has nominated Joe Wilson for the Marketing and Communications Director for the ASUC Senate. He's already sort of started doing the camera work and other things for the Senate, is now managing the Senate Twitter account, if I'm not mistaken. So, Joe, if you'd like to come up and answer questions for people. Does anyone have questions for Joe? And feel free to just introduce yourself to the Senate.
All right. Hi, I'm Joe Wilson. I'm a first year intended econ major, and I'll be taking over for marketing and communications.
Yeah, questions? Senator Feynman?
Yeah, this is a little unrelated to pretty much anything, but are you related to Joe Wilson, the guy from the Valley Plane movie?
No.
All right, cool.
Other questions? Perhaps those related to the position. Okay, so if there are no questions, this is the 1 week announcement mark that we have to do. Joe will be back next week. Well, I mean, he'll be at Senate regularly, but he'll be back next week for an official confirmation. If you all come up with any questions or comments specifically for Joe next week, he can come back to answer questions as well. I know this is short notice to come up with questions about MCD. Senator Rafi?
Do you
you just have any like ideas about what you want to do with the position, or where you want to go?
I really want to be able to help kind of outreach to students, especially using social media. I think we can do a lot more with Facebook and Twitter and the YouTube accounts that we have to kind of reach out to students and make those resources for students, for them to learn more about what ASUC does. I think there are a lot of people on campus who don't know what ASUC does, and that's something we can really easily fix by using social media and other forms of communication. So,
Senator Bobia?
This is a little more specific question, but do you think that there are specific communities and groups and like cliques on campus that aren't necessarily reached out to as much as others might be, and how would you kind of tackle that problem?
that's a good question. I know there was a focus group that was supposed to be organized to look at that and gauge what different groups on campus thought about ASUC, and that's something that I don't really know yet, and something that I want to know and be able to work with in the future. So,
Other questions? Okay, so if there are no other questions, we will see Joe again next week, but he has been formally nominated per our bylaws. Thank you. Okay, Senator Woche, you also had a request to amend the agenda to add an additional special order.
Yeah, so it was concerning Cal Lodge or so. I guess Dan contacted me about just yesterday or a few days ago. Essentially, he wanted to come in next week to give a special order.
So because this is a Finance Committee matter, I do want to wait for the Finance Committee's report. I had the option of bringing in Dan for a special order this week or next week or any week, but I did defer to the Finance Committee to determine whether or not the Finance Committee would like to move forward with that, because they're the ones who are making the decision on the bill. So if we can just wait until the standing committee reports to discuss that, that would be preferred.
Okay, cool.
So let's move then into standing committee reports. Senator Mohabbat, do you want to talk to us about finance?
Yeah, so this week we discussed two bills that were on the agenda. SB 42, which is the Week 8 budget bill, it ended up being amended to an overall amount of $2,260.23, with $420.23 of that coming out of contingency and $1,715 of that coming out of the Space Reservation Fund. We also discussed SB 37, which is the Cal Lodge bill. After discussing with Dennis and EVP PAC, we decided that we should table the bill just to wait for more information, get more legal advice from our attorney and other people working on this, just to make sure that, we're coming into this with the most information, the most up-to-date information, the most accurate information, because it is our only asset as far as land goes, so we don't really want to do anything too crazy without getting the most information first.
Questions for Senator Mohabbat about this report? Okay, let's move on then to constitutional and procedural review standing committee report.
Hi. This week we didn't have any bills to discuss, but we did have SB 44, which we'll discuss next week. We had a presentation from the EVP regarding Attorney General, Solicitor General, and Controller General, and their specific responsibilities and roles. And our committee has reviewed what we want to change within the bylaws since we only have, for this semester, since we only have 6 weeks left. Yes, 6 weeks. A couple of things that are proposed bylaw reforms are elections, recruitment of appointed officials, programs, bylaws regarding institutional memory, tracking bills, and looking over Senate and executive staff. But we will have further conversations during our committee meeting next week. We are meeting at 8 p.m. next week here.
Great. And our last standing committee report from University and External Affairs.
Yep. All right. So SB 41 passed unanimously. SB 35 passed unanimously. SB 38 passed unanimously with amendments. SB 36 passed unanimously with amendments. SB 27 passed unanimously with amendments. SB 39 passed unanimously with amendments, and SB 40 passed unanimously with amendments. That is all.
Great, thank you, Senator Jax. So before, I have a feeling that the Cal Lodge question is going to spark more discussion than I would like to have before consent calendar, because we do have people who have been waiting to comment to us on items that are on the consent calendar. So out of respect for their time, because it's late on a Wednesday night, before we move into consent calendar, I'd like to invite up, if we still have speakers here, Jay Alsander, Carmen Williams, and it looks like Eileen Gaines. So if you'd like to come up and talk to us.
How long do they have?
Just thank you for coming. So this set of speakers is coming to talk to us specifically about the bill on the BART strike, and so they're here to talk to us about that, and each of you will have 2 minutes to talk to the Senate.
Okay, first of all, I would like to say thank you guys for your continued support, supporting us with the bill. I'm a BART worker, and I've been working for BART for 17 years now as a system service worker, and I clean up the station when everybody is asleep, so when you come in, and we just try to keep it clean for you, okay? So I just wanted to just really come up here and just say thank you. I was really touched when we came here Monday night, because as you know, the media has portrayed us as greedy, spoiled brats. And I'll tell you, I came from UC Berkeley. I worked at the Golden Bear. That was my job. And then I also was working at the post office. And because I was a single parent back then, trying to do the right thing by working and taking care of my own child, I then went over to BART because I needed benefits. So it was a good thing for me then, and it's still a good thing for me now, but we just have different people that came into the system, and the power play thing took in effect. So I'm not going to waste your time, more time on this, because you followed the media, and we were here the other night, so you have an insight on it. So I'm going to turn it over to my sister Carmen. And again, from all of our team and our workers, we want to say thank you very much, and we're all out doing different things, because this fight is not over for us, okay? Thank you.
Thank you for having the opportunity to have us here. I'm with BART. I've been with BART for 9 years. I'm SEIU. I'm the BART chapter secretary, and I was on the negotiation team. And I tell you, it was something that I had never experienced and thought what we would go through, and it was really trying. Families on us. The attack that our own company put on us out in the media, it still has an effect on me. And, we have to go back to work and do our job, but it's really hard. And for us losing 2 of our members from our job that we work with, and they still haven't even recognized that. BART still think that they're untouchable, that nobody can do anything with them, and it is serious issues at BART. So I'm really happy that you guys are stepping forward and trying to help us, because BART really needs to be governed by someone, because they are totally out of control and disrespectful to not only us, but to the patrons as well. So I thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you both for coming. We have one last comment card from Jay, if Jay is here. No.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have one additional public comment about the consent calendar from Stefan Elgstrand on the second response bill, SB 39, I believe.
Good evening, Senators. Hope you can hear me. So I just wanted to comment in support of the second response ordinance. So basically, as of right now, the City of Berkeley says that if during the first response, they're basically saying that you are guilty. There is no way to appeal that, and that goes against the 5th and 14th Amendment, saying that people have a right to due process, which means that you can appeal such things. So I just wanted to bring you some updates of what's happening over at the City Council. I was at last night's City Council meeting where they were originally going to vote on it, but it has since been postponed to November 12th. And I encourage all of you to, come out to the City Council meeting. It's November 12th. It starts at 7 o'clock. The actual item will probably be up for discussion around 8:30 probably. It's important that we get student support out there because unfortunately many people in the Berkeley community believe that, students are just, all they do is get drunk and destroy the city. And while I think it is important for us to be more respectful to the city, we should also be able to have these rights, making sure that we can appeal such processes. So I hope that you all vote for this and will come out to the City Council meetings to support this. Thank you.
So with no further public comments, we now move into our consent calendar.
I rise to a point of privilege. No impact. I was just going to say essentially because I should have the right at least to make a special order to require about that. I know you said it may take time or so, but at least I think it would be.
I'm not saying that we won't get to it. I am saying that out of respect for the speakers that we have here and because we're had now that we've gone through that.
I mean, at least because every two people.
You can make the motion for the special order and see if that survives. I
was at least going to just explain the reasoning. I would think that's at least in order. Like I said, Dan contacted me and essentially said that he's been trying to get in contact with us, essentially, that all he wants to do is to come next week in order to make a presentation, and I feel that's in order for the Senate to make a educated decision about Cal Laws, that we should at least allow the person managing Cal Laws to come in next week. So he contacted me saying he's been trying to get in contact with the executives, et cetera, and they haven't been responding. I don't think that's true, but at least he said that he wants to at least come in next week to do that, and that's what I was going to make a special order for, and I think that's at least in order for us before we make any type of decisions, especially that I know a lot of my student groups even called me today saying essentially that they use the Cal Laws, and if we shut it down, it would be very detrimental, but I told them before I make a decision, I have to have a very informed decision, and that's why I think we should at least make a special order, once again, to allow him to come in next week. At least explain, even if we don't, whether or not you have a prejudice against him, if you don't like him, et cetera, you should at least be allowed to come in and make a presentation about the Cal Laws. So with that being said, I was going to make a motion to have a special order.
Is the motion made or is the motion not made? Just make the motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Okay. So it's been moved. Is there a second? Second. So we'll now enter discussion. Senator Panya.
I object. So basically, sitting on FICOM, there's a lot of things that are going into the decision about Cal Lodge that people who aren't sitting on FICOM might not necessarily know about right now. And that has to do with, a lot of the law policies, a lot of the structural soundness of the, the building itself and things like that we are trying to look into before we bring Dan in for a presentation necessarily, if that presentation is necessary at all. And so we're trying to wait until we have the further information and the necessary information before we, go ahead with that. And so I would urge you to withdraw the motion and at least let us postpone that until a later date when we do have more information.
I'd also just like to note before we continue on the FICOM Senator's comments that as EVP, as the person who's designated to deal with ASUC's spaces in the bylaws, Cal Lodge has been an immense source of frustration for me because of the way that Dan really does not respond quickly to requests for information. I'm fascinated by the idea that Dan was able to reach out to many of you in Senate and to call you, but he still has not responded to Dennis's request to figure out which groups have reserved the Cal Lodge over the next several months. So there's still information that we have asked for. These are weeks old requests that have not been responded to, and now we're getting this idea that there has to be some rush to come in for a presentation on the Cal Lodge when a lot of our questions that could be answered by a simple email still have not been answered. So I'm just going to put that on the table as a source of frustration. And Senator Mojave and then Senator Shen.
I just want to expel this idea that we're trying to stonewall Dan. He's definitely welcome in the space. It's just that I know as FICOM, we're trying to hash out so many other things before we invite him into the space, and I know Nolan's office is as well. So we just want to take a step back, really look at what our assets and it's really what we own is on the line. It's not necessarily Dan's. He's not even on contract. So I'm just I'm fascinated that we're trying to bend backwards for somebody who's not even on contract with us. But so I just want everyone to understand that we're not ignoring Dan per se. It's just we're trying to figure out our own stuff before we invite him to speak.
Senator Shen.
Ooh. Sarah, I was just curious, so has anyone responded back?
I guess that's my kid speak. Dan called me. It was really awkward because why is Dan calling me? But he called me, and I think he called me because there are organizations in the Raza community that have been at CalArts, and he was like, hey, do you know Ashley Lopez? Talk to Trenza. He knew Trenza, but like there are folks from Trenza that have like gone to CalArts, so talk to them. And I didn't bring my notes because I forgot to write this again, but he laid out like 3 issues that he sees as to why like CalLodge is not functioning properly, and like one of them was the fact that ASUC, like we don't push for CalLodge, and it's like our fault because we don't tell student groups to like go to CalLodge. And he's like, we're at the tipping point right now. We have about 5,000 students and we're doing really great. And then he said like 80% of people that are at CalLodge are not even students, so that's where like we come in and it's our fault. And then he said it's not like a contract issue, but it's a systematic issue between us and him. And he was like, I've been trying to get in contact, like, well, the last 7 years or so with the Senate classes, I've been trying to get you all to invest in CalLodge so that it's not where it is right now, but you all are just like not responding. So he was basically telling me like, it's all your fault, ASUC, like, get your shit together because, yeah.
So briefly, before we move down the speakers list, I do want to note that per the data that Dennis showed us, that even in the months where it's booked every single weekend, we still continue to lose money more even than when it's not booked at all, which is this really incredible, mind-blowing thing for me. So one additional, I guess, point of follow-up there is, I think it's important to note the flaws in the current management model that we have right now, that we continue to lose money even if the lodge is really like consistently booked, one, but two, that from the person who's taken on the role of managing the CalLodge and coming up with a direction for the CalLodge, we also have not been able to get a business plan. So when I was in Senate last year, when I was in Senate talking about this, we asked Dan for a business plan. So when he said invest in the CalLodge, that was too abstract for our Senate class. We said, please give us something more than that. Like, what do you mean when you say invest? And rather than rattling off a list of sort of conceptual things, like, give us some idea of what you're looking for. And so we have never gotten that follow-up information. I don't want to sound like snide when I say this, but given the amount of time that the CalLodge is not actually booked, that there are not people staying in the CalLodge, I think there's ample time to come up with some sort of business plan or new direction for the CalLodge to go. And if we decide to bring Dan in, I would urge the senators to ask that question. Senator Truax?
The reason I was asking that was actually because I just think for the senators that he has reached out to, like, we could just ask him, like, I think we should respond and just tell him that, kind of the current situation, but also, like, give him the questions that he hasn't responded to Dennis with, since I think that's a good way.
What would be preferable for me, so that all of the senators can be involved in the conversation and not just one or two who happen to be corresponding with him, is that if you all have questions outside of the ones that Dennis and I have been asking, is that if we can pull those questions together, and if we decide to bring Dan in for a special order to make that sort of a prerequisite where we say, like, we're going to give you these 17 questions or something like that. When you come for your presentation, answer these questions first before you do anything else.
Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable like asking questions and receiving responses that wasn't in front of everyone. So I told them, like, if you were to have a presentation, you'd best do it in front of all senators and not just like single out senators and like try to lobby us.
Yeah, Senator Truax?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, like, Solomon, I see where you're coming from, but I personally do want to hear from Dan, but it's just like not right now. Like, I really want FICOM to hash things out.
Senator Boche?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Like I said, if FICOM wants to hash things out, that's not, like I said, I didn't hear anything. That's why I had to, as you know, I had to correspond. But even given that said, the reason why I was motioning, because I didn't see what the conflict would be with him coming in next week, but it is the will of the Senate or FICOM. But also to remind you all, like we said before, we're losing money every week or so, right? And the more information we have, the better, because a lot of the questions a lot of answers I've heard here are he say, she say. Obviously, I believe everything people said, but like, for example, some of the questions I asked Dennis last week, he wasn't able to answer, not because of his own, but because only Dan had those answers. Like, for example, what's our maximum profit, et cetera, for things of that sort. And also, too, just to keep in mind the fact that I think in the future, if we are going to decide that we should, in fact, bring him in, I think he told me his next available date will be November 20th from when he corresponded with me. And the fact that, just think about the fact that, every year you're essentially dealing with the Senate and you have 20 new members or 20 new bodies that you have to deal with. Is essentially not saying that's an easy thing or a hard thing to do on his part, not giving them credit or anything, or not giving us credit, but that's a very hard thing to do. You have 20 stakeholders every single year, including executives, and that's a very hard thing to do. But my thing, like I said, I'm not on anyone's side. I just want to hear the information. But at least if we can at least make it a priority to hear from them before we make any type of decision, period, in the future. So yeah.
Senators Iwilma and Shan.
Sam, would you be down to, I think one thing we could do is maybe collecting the questions from senators that they would have for Dan, maybe just compiling all those questions and then giving that to Dan ahead of time, and maybe either having him answer the questions and send that back to us, or so he can make sure we have those questions. I think I don't think we're going to move forward on this right now, but I think moving forward on something tangible is being able to see all the questions that we need to have answers, so when he does come, or ahead of time, he can come prepared. I think Nolan mentioned this earlier, and I thought that was a good idea that we could move forward with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down with that, like I said, but once again, I would still want him to come in physically.
Senator Shen?
So, yeah.
Sorry. I agree. I think, Senator, I just think that it makes sense for us to kind of, as the Senate, we need to be a unanimous body, like we all, and I think it comes more professional if we all have, like, for example, like questions, I think they can be answered directly just through email, like, for your example, like your question about what's the maximal profit, like, I don't think he needs to come to Senate physically to be able to answer that, like, that's something that he probably, if you ask him in person, like without giving him notice beforehand, he'll probably actually be like, oh, actually, I don't know it off the top of my head. So that's kind of why I think, like, kind of what everyone else has said, like, kind of preparing that list of questions and giving him a heads up will give him ample time, and so then he can't kind of give the excuse like, oh, I wasn't ready for this question. On the other hand, like, I think if he's kind of like almost threatening that, like, I mean, maybe it's not a threat, but it's like, oh, like, if I don't come in next week, I won't be able to come in until like November 20th. Like, I think he needs to realize that, like, if, you know, it's been years, and like, if he's not like going, if we're closing down the lodge and he's not going to be there at that meeting, like what, yeah, he needs to kind of figure out his priorities too.
So I would really like to strongly reinforce what Senator Shen said, that if we prepare the questions in advance and give him time to answer them, I think that the Senate will either get more satisfactory answers or will be left with questions about why you didn't. When my Senate class asked very specific questions, it was often sort of fallen back on that, like, well, I came prepared with this presentation and don't have the answers to those questions. And I think that because you all are really close to making a critical decision about the Cal Lodge, that it would be in your best interest to put those questions out in the open so that we can collect the answers, and to the extent that you can avoid corresponding individually for the sake of transparency with other senators, that we can have all that information on the table. I also do want to recognize our finance officer briefly, and then Senators Feinman and Mohabbat.
Hello. So he actually promised me he will supply me with the monthly statement of Cal Lodge for the past 7 years, and also the report of winter reservations for Cal Lodge in this upcoming winter months. And I told him that I would need that information for last week for my presentation, and he said that he will provide the information for me before that, and then that's like our last conversation. And I don't know what, like, that's why I couldn't answer some of you guys' questions, because I don't have that information. So I'd like to apologize for that. But then the thing is also, like, I don't understand why he's trying to go around me and to contact some of you guys, and he wants to, I don't know what he's trying to pull, but yeah. So another thing I want to point out is that based on my past conversation between me and him, I would say he tends to go off topic and rambles about something else. So if we as if senators would like to bring him in and have a special order, I would suggest to make a time limit so that he doesn't talk about something else. Yeah.
I move to call for this question.
All right, there's been a motion to call the question. Is there a second? Are there any objections to the motion?
Yeah, I mean, I would just object and just withdraw my motion.
Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn. The question is resolved. Senator Mohabbat?
I just said.
Okay.
I just had one.
Senator Woche?
I mean, yeah, one thing I was going to say, like, I think just to clarify, I think we were sort of talking over each other's head. Everything I said, like, nothing's mutually exclusive. What I was just clarifying there is essentially that I'm for us giving him the questions in advance, but I'm also for us strongly bringing him in whether or not we give the questions in advance. Second thing, once again, Dennis, I wasn't trying to say that you weren't. I said, yeah, you were good. I was just saying essentially the answers you couldn't answer because it wasn't your, it wasn't it's not within your field for you to answer that. I mean, the third thing I was going to say is, like I said, once again, I've heard a lot of he say, she say, but once again, I'm sorry. One thing I was going to to say in terms of Senator Shen, what you said about, whether or not he's going to come during the Cal Lodge. I mean, he lives 3 hours away, from what I understand, at Cal Lodge, and
Just
essentially.
want to remind senators, there's no motion on the table. We're not debating a motion right
Yeah,
now.
no, I'm just clarifying.
We should be moving into consent calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just clarifying previous questions, so I mean.
The question was resolved, so.
Okay, all right. But I mean, once again, he lives 3 hours away, and then it just makes more sense.
Senator
for that
Woche,
time.
please.
Thank you.
Restrain yourself.
You recognize me, so I don't understand the problem.
Okay, on consent calendar, now that we are on consent calendar, would anybody like to pull something from consent calendar? Senator Mohammed?
I'd like to pull SB 35.
Okay, so SB 35 has now been pulled from consent calendar. It moves into immediate consideration. Also, just as a second, we still have in immediate consideration the drop the I-word bill from last week.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, do I have to pull a bill to change its name? Because I think my bill's name got messed up somehow. It just says a bill support BART.
Okay, so if that's not the way that the bill was meant to come out of committee, if that's not what it was amended to in committee, we'll just note that as a typo and the minutes will show it as correct.
Okay, beautiful. It's a bill in support of BART workers and in opposition to California Senate Bill 423.
Okay, that makes more sense grammatically. Senator Feynman?
Yeah, point of preference, I know this might be a little bit tedious, but if we're going to bring bills to consent, do you mind projecting it? Because I don't think they're printed in the packet, so just so we can see the bills.
The bills that are on consent calendar are printed on your agenda.
They are?
Yes.
No, they're not.
No, I mean the titles of the bills are.
No, it's on the packet. Yeah,
just
sorry.
one note. In order for the office manager to print the bills in the packet, the revised bills need to be sent out of committee as part of the minutes. So if revised bills are not sent out of committee and nobody gets them, then there's no way for us to print them in the packet.
Right. All I was asking is if we're going to bring the content of the bill to the consent calendar for discussion, can we have that bill projected?
As we get to each bill, we can try to bring them up based on what we have from committees.
Great, thank you very much.
Senator Woche?
So just had had two questions real quick, parliamentary inquiry. So I wanted to pull my bill to just revise the title. Did I need to do that in order to revise the title?
Which bill is this?
SB 27.
Is it a typo or are you looking to?
No, I'm actually looking to, so I guess that's what I was gonna I think I would have to pull it in order to make that amendment, right?
Yeah, the title is part of the bill.
Okay.
So we have SB 27 that's been pulled into immediate consideration. Are there any other things that senators would like to pull from consent calendar? Senator Week?
I don't want to pull anything, but I just want to add myself as a sponsor to 4 different bills.
For which ones?
Can I add myself as a sponsor to SB 36, SB 38, SB 39, and SB 40?
Okay. So, yeah, so Senator Week, those 4 bills in a row, right? Okay. Senator Tan?
Can I also be added as a co-sponsor to SB 35?
SB 35? Okay, Senator Tan is added as a co-sponsor to SB 35. Senator Pandya?
Where's your bill?
Sorry, Senator Upadhyaya.
No worries.
Terrible.
Now I'm a social
I haven't had coffee
sponsor
this evening. Wow, that's awful.
It's okay. Don't even worry about it. SB 36, SB 38, and SB 39.
35, 38.
36, 38, and 39.
Okay. Senator Truax, and briefly before we continue, is there just if we can brainstorm, maybe Conrad can take this up, if there's a more streamlined way that we can do this, that would be sweet. Senator Truax?
Yeah, so I was thinking when I send out the agenda for external committee, because I feel like most of the bills are external bills, can you just email me which bills you want to sponsor and I'll put you on those bills?
Yeah, and again, so this is not a formal process that's amending the bill. We're doing this, I guess, for the sake of the minute, so it's recorded that way. So for today, we'll add people as sponsors verbally, but in the future, it would be great if we could do that outside so that we can glide through this section. Other things on consent calendar. Senator Pandya, for real this time.
Yeah, I just wanted to add myself as a sponsor for SB 35, 36, and 38.
So if those have been noted, okay. Senators Snow, Chung, and Woche.
Can I be a co-sponsor of SB 40?
Okay.
Oh, can I add myself as a co-sponsor for SB 35 and 41?
Okay. Senator Woche?
Oh, and 40, I'm so sorry, and 40.
Okay, duly noted.
Yeah, I was just gonna also pull SB 42.
So SB 42 has also been pulled from the consent calendar. Okay, other things on consent calendar. All right, that's been noted. Senator Kong?
Okay. I would like to add myself as a sponsor for 35, 36, 38, 39, 40, and 41.
Okay. Additional co-sponsoring noted. Other things on consent calendar. Okay, so to clarify and recap, we've had SBs 27, 35, and 42 pulled from consent calendar to be added to this week's immediate consideration along with last week's bill on dropping the I word. What number is that one? 37. 33 is the I word one, correct? All right. So I guess we can just go in order. Yes.
What are we doing? Consent calendar doesn't have to be approved for the motion. So bylaws say that once you move on something, it's considered as automatically.
It would help. Immediate consideration.
So the numbers that are left on consent calendar are Senate Bills 36, 38, 39, 40, and 41.
36, 38, 39, 40, and 41. Right.
Correct. Okay. So we'll now move into immediate consideration where we have Senate Bills 27, 33, 35, and 42. So if there are no objections to the order, we'll just go in order. Senator Woche, I believe, is the primary sponsor for SB 27. So would you like to speak on that bill?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it was the bill addressing the UC Berkeley blackout, but I changed it so it wouldn't make any policy revisions, and I just put it in solidarity with students, so that's what I was going to amend it. So right now it reads, addressing UC Berkeley's crisis management, so I would amend it to read, addressing UC Berkeley's crisis management in solidarity with students. So yeah. So yeah, no, not the resolve clause, so the actual title would just read, addressing UC Berkeley's crisis management in solidarity with students. Yeah.
Okay, so I believe a motion has been made to change the title of the bill as read. Is there a second to the motion? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? All right, are there any objections? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. So now to resolve that, we'll have to have a motion to pass SB 27.
I move to pass SB 27.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any objections to the motion? Any abstentions? One abstention. All right, motion carries. We're now done with SB 27. On SB 33, I believe Senator Tan is the primary sponsor. Would you like to introduce that bill?
Hi, so the Drop the I Word campaign is basically to discourage the use of the word illegal in terms of referring it to undocumented immigrants, especially undocumented students on campus. It's particularly a word that has affected students here in terms of feeling safe on campus as well as included on our campus community. And the use of the word is in part ignorance of the causes of migration, either in the international, national, or state or individual level. I do have one amendment that I want to put for SB 33. Which I sent to the Vice Chair, but I will read it for the minutes. It says, therefore be it resolved that the ASUC President, Donna Jo Pepito, write a separate letter inviting Chancellor Nicholas Dirks and his cabinet to a presentation regarding issues affecting AB 540 and or undocumented students on campus facilitated by coordinators from the undocumented student program. And
Mr. Tan, can you send me? Yeah.
So with the motion, or the proposed amendment up, is there a motion to amend the bill?
Sorry, there was one typo. It says affecting AB 540 and or undocumented students without the issue.
You make it bigger?
So what I would suggest for this purpose, because the author has introduced this motion, is that we just move to adopt the bill as amended for discussion. so that we're now talking about the amended bill as opposed to the previous bill. Is there? All right, it's been moved and seconded. We're now, okay, is there any opposition to the motion? Any abstentions? Okay, so we're now discussing the amended bill, which is going to get a little bit bigger, I hope. Are there any questions for Senator Tan about the amendment or the bill in general? Senator Rafi?
Hey, Liza, can you speak into the mic here?
Is this something that came up during the meeting and you just want to like have it in writing as part of the bill?
So the proposed amendment is actually for a separate presentation for Chancellor Dirks. My conversation and the conversation of other AB 540 undocumented students during the fireside chat was that the Chancellor was in support and, is in support of undocumented students, but needs more information regarding what specific issues affect students here on campus, specifically towards the undocumented student program, mental health, food and housing security, re-entry students, as well as recruitment and retention.
Okay. Any other questions for Senator Tan about this bill?
This is about discussion about the bill, or just a question to him? Discussion in general.
I mean, if there are no questions, we can move into, well, before we discuss the bill, we would have to put a motion on the table to pass the bill, and then we would enter discussion about it. So is there a motion to pass SB 33 as it appears?
SB 33
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll now move into discussion about the bill. Senator Woche?
Yeah, so for one thing I was going to say, so last week, I don't know, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't know, at Sterno or so. So a young constituent, he came in essentially to speak, I guess, against his bill essentially. And essentially he was very disrespected. So I saw many senators laughing while he was speaking. I saw many senators had their back turned to him. And for me, this is very disrespectful because if it were any of your constituents, you would have interrupted and said, "Excuse me, could you please stop laughing?" So excuse me, could you please respect my constituent? Excuse me, could you please respect my constituent as a human being? Also to Emily, you weren't one of those who were a smart maker and you were respectful, but the reason why I'm also calling you out as the chair of that is because you allowed this to happen while some senators had their back turns, as well as the fact that when his time was up, no one was asked whether we're going to extend time on him. The time was up and we just let him, and the time was just up, and essentially we just looked at him and stared at him like, okay, could you please get off the floor or anything? So I've just felt this person was very disrespected, and I feel that that's very hypocritical, especially being the fact that many of you would have boiled over and been very angry if it were any of your constituents. So I just want to say that point. So the actual motion of the bill or so. So one thing I was going to say essentially, why myself I'm in opposition to the bill because it's not because I don't have, it's not because I don't sympathize with the immigrant movement. Of course, I have to remind you myself. I myself am Nigerian, and we have a large immigrant population that comes out of Africa or so. And many Nigerian immigrants, as well as some students, are undocumented students or so. But the term illegal here, the reason why I'm not in favor of its removing it, because it's just essentially putting a euphemism behind a word or so. If we want to actually act and if we want to actually stop the word illegal, quote unquote, then let's actually move legislation to make the actual act of it not being illegal. But trying to put a euphemism behind the word saying whether it's not illegal or not, I think that's going to make us a laughingstock of the nation. And to me, it's just not common sense in doing that. And once again, I stress here that I'm not trying to say that I'm not sympathetic to the movement, because I personally know people who are quote unquote illegal immigrants or undocumented students. But I'm trying to say here essentially that for us to try and remove the word as a euphemism doesn't actually stop the problem. I have to remind you also to looking at the things that we have put euphemism words. So for example, the words such as retarded, imbecile, et cetera, those are words that actually meant what they meant, right? But as we moved on, people started using it as words. But it still goes back to the actual meaning of the term. So I just wanted to say that. So once again, I would say that first of all, I felt it was very disrespectful the way we treated that patron, especially in a Senate such here as UC Berkeley, where we claim to have free speech. And a lot of times we are not very tolerant of people who don't have the same opinion as us. Many times if people don't have the same opinion as us, we often demonize them and we often hate them. And for that person to actually come here and to have the actual the bravery to speak from the Senate, knowing that 90% of the senators did not support that bill, was very brave of him. And the fact that we treated him in that respect, I feel is very disrespectful. So I just want to say that on that motion.
Senator Tan?
In terms of our use or discouraging the use of the word illegal, it's understandable that it may be a little bit more symbolic But it does pertain to the psychological effects of using the word specifically to undocumented students here on campus. I know, Senator Roche, that you do have friends or you know people who are undocumented, but seeing that you are not undocumented yourself, you don't can really bear what it really takes to be called illegal every single day of your life. Being here at UC Berkeley as an undocumented student, it's hard to be called illegal. It's hard being invalidated for your existence. It's also being questioned for being here at UC Berkeley. For being asked, like, why are you at UC Berkeley? Why are you taking a seat that's supposed to be a US citizen? These are the kinds of things that affect students. And it just doesn't affect them psychologically, but it affects them academically and in all aspects of their lives, because they are being treated as something that is not supposed to be here, or is pretty much invalidated. And in terms of the public comment during external committee, I don't see it as a disrespect. The senators were exercising their personal privilege. And I won't speak for other senators, but sitting there, I felt really silenced, and I took that because out of respect for public comment, to be called straight out in that committee as an illegal immigrant, and to be affirmed in that sense that, you know, that there is no conflict in this. And I see it that there is conflict when you use the word illegal when referring to individuals, and especially like as students here at UC Berkeley, we promote ourselves for having inclusivity, but we don't actively show it. And pretty much what I want to speak on this bill is more than just discouraging the use of the word illegal. We are moving legislations through the Senate to address the issues that affect undocumented students and undocumented immigrants. And let's not forget that.
Senator Pacheco and Senator Feinman and Senator Snow, I also want to remind senators and sort of like recenter ourselves on the discussion, and because this bill has been vetted in the University and External Affairs Committee and we have had discussions, I'd like to remind us that if we really feel like the debate is not changing anybody's mind, or if like votes are not being changed in the debate, that we really are sort of talking for the sake of literally the camera, I guess. With that said, if there aren't objections from the Senate, I'd like to limit comments from this point forward to 2 minutes, so that we can continue to move the discussion forward and just ask members to be cognizant of what's being said, anything that might be repetitious, and move us toward a place where we can resolve the question that's on the floor.
I would like to object to 2 minutes time briefing. I said I'd like to object to 2 minutes.
Objections been noted. Are there other objections? We will continue with 2-minute time limit.
So first off, Senator Tan, I want to commend you for being brave enough to speak as an undocumented student in face of so much like negative energy towards you. I think that we all on the external committee faced on Monday. I'd also like to say that I don't think we ever extend time for public comment, so I just wanted to let you know that, Senator Noche. I want to recognize the fact that we should not be sitting here repeating like everything, but there is certain things that need repeating so that folks understand, right? I think one of the main points that I wanted to make is that this bill is not just about like symbolism, right? But it's a shift in culture in the way we see our fellow human beings, and the fact that people feel comfortable calling each other illegal is not okay. And like, trust, this bill is not going to change immigration legislation. That's like a bigger fight on a much larger scale. But this bill is one way to attack the issue, right? Because I don't think that a change in legislation or comprehensive immigration reform is going to change the way other folks see undocumented students in this country. And one of those ways in which they see undocumented students is illegal. So this bill is much more than just us saying like, don't say it to like hurt people's feelings, but more so to change the culture in which we see one another as human beings, like you said.
Senator Feinman?
Yeah, I think when looking at this bill, it's important to realize this is talking about how we identify human beings, and like Senator Tan said, like no human being is illegal. I think when you read through the therefore be resolves, it talks about things that I think we all agree are very important: community, racial equality, justice, brighter future. I don't think that this bill is doing nothing. I think this bill is bringing together the community, not just the community of undocumented students, but of allies and other groups that also appreciate the fact that they don't want their community members, their friends, and their peers to be called illegal. And I think that that's something that we should all take into consideration, knowing that we're all part of this community. We all have, maybe classmates who may be undocumented students that we don't know, and it's not something you can read when you look at somebody. You can't see somebody and say, oh, that's an undocumented student, because it's something that's hidden beneath their physical presence. And I think that's something that we should all consider, that there may be community members that we don't know are undocumented students, and they should not be considered illegal, because they are just as much a part of our community as any other student. Thank you.
Senator Woche? Actually, so before we move on, because we're in debate on the question, I'm supposed to exhaust the list of anybody else who would like to speak before I return to call on somebody a second time. So for those of you who have not spoken yet, now is the opportunity to speak, and we're supposed to go in a full circle unless no one else has. So Senators Chung and then Quinn.
Can you move to call to previous question?
Absolutely. So there's been a motion to call the question. It's been moved and seconded. Let's do this. For the author of the bill, do you have a preferable way of calling roll?
Roll call.
All right, so a roll call vote has been requested. There has been a motion by Senator Chung to call the question. We will move into a roll call vote on SB 33. So if there are no objections, we'll consider the rolls open. Senator Chow?
Yes.
Senator Chung?
Yes.
Senator Feynman?
Yes, with comment.
Senator Iwoma?
Yes.
Senator Khan?
Yes.
Senator Lee?
Yes.
Senator Mohabbat?
Aye.
Senator Mullen? Senator Woche?
No comment.
Senator Pacheco?
Yes.
Senator Pandya?
Yes.
Senator Quinn?
Yes.
Senator Rafi?
Yes.
Senator Shen?
Yes.
Senator Snow?
Yes.
Senator Tan?
Yes.
Senator Truax?
Yes with comment.
Senator Upadiula?
Yes, with comment.
Senator Week?
Yes.
Senator Wu?
Yes.
Senators at ease while we tally the votes. Okay, so if there are no objections, we'll consider the rolls closed. The motion passes with a vote of 18 in favor and 1 against. We'll now proceed through comments in order. Senator Feynman.
Yeah, I'll keep this short because I said most of what I wanted to say in my comment, but I just want to say thank you to Senator Tan for bringing this up. I think it's important that when issues come up about people's identities, that we really take a step back and think about, contextualize what that means in the sense of community. I know for me, being a Jewish student, not something you can see physically on your body unless you choose to put it on yourself. I think it's important to realize that there are many people who have parts of identities that they don't physically show, but are still just as much as part of their identity as things that you do show. That's always something that you can't take for granted. And I do appreciate the comments that have been made, and I think that it's really great that we acknowledge this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Feynman. Senator Woche.
One thing I was going to say essentially is in general, first of all, addressing EVP Nolan Pack. This is the second time when there's a bill come up and you said essentially if anyone is not going to, I don't essentially see this motion going anywhere, can we just move the previous question essentially? And I just wanted to mention that was the second time you did it on me, and this is something that I've felt very continually disrespected at the Senate floor. Obviously, I know my opinions do not value expressed as a whole as the Senate does, but essentially I think I still have the respect as a senator as I try to respect you as a chair. Second point I was going to make essentially is that Justice Senator Tan in the beginning, you were essentially saying that you don't feel that you disrespected that patron, and you talked about inclusivity and not actually showing it, and that's essentially what you did. This person came, and whether or not you respected their opinion or not, whether or not you didn't you agree with their opinion or not, that person actually had the right to speak. And the fact that you all sat there and snickered and laughed and you're defending that, I feel for me is very irreprehensible. The fact that you all are trying to defend that for me, maybe no other senators want to stand up and say it, but I myself will say that that is very disrespectful. And you can defend that if you want, but that is not the right way to do it, because I know, once again, if it was your community members, you would not be happy about that. And once again, I want to illustrate here that I do have members. The fact that I don't have to be an documented student myself to actually speak on this issue doesn't mean that I'm trying to be not emotional or not trying to understand the position that's actually being taken here, but I was just essentially speaking on that point. And I know, once again, of course, I know it was in the past, but I just want to make sure that voice is represented here, as many of my constituents make that point. Lastly, I was going to say on that same point too, is that I would feel that I've felt very disrespectful on the Senate floor, and I'm also addressing Catherine too, because you called for the previous question, and you wouldn't have called for the previous question if it was anything on your bill in particular. And this is the, we have 6 Senate meetings left, and every single Senate meeting I felt very disrespectful. I know I am an independent candidate, but I would just ask you to at least respect me as your peer here, as a senator, and that's one of the things I was going to say there. Thank you.
Just before we move on in comments, I want to note, we have rules about how debate proceeds. When we're in debate on a question, I'm required to call people and recognize people who have not spoken before I return to somebody who has spoken, unless the people who haven't spoken yet yield their time and say that I don't wish to speak. So forgive me if I for a moment forgot that and didn't move on to people who hadn't spoken yet. I apologize, but I do want to note that. And as this right has been exercised by many senators of all backgrounds, it is any given senator's right to call the question that's on the floor at any time they choose. Whether or not that motion is accepted is contingent on the other senators, and I think the agreement of the Senate class on when the question should be called is sufficient for us to move on in discussion.
Rise to a point of privilege. The complaint I was making essentially was the fact that you recognized
Senator
me.
Wocha, you have not been recognized to speak.
According to parliamentary procedure, if I rise to a point of privilege, I can make a complaint. And the complaint I'm making essentially is that you recognized me and then told me I wasn't allowed to speak in one of the previous motions.
As
and
I
that's what I was
mentioned,
saying.
it was a mistake. I was out of procedure. Instead of calling on somebody who hadn't spoken yet, I called on somebody who had. Again, apologies to the Senate for making that mistake. Senator Truax?
For Solomon, I do want to thank you for bringing up your perspective and your thoughts about the night. I really do appreciate that, because I feel like open discourse is important as a democratically elected body. However, just more focusing on public comment that night, I personally did not feel that he was disrespected, because people are expressing their own opinions and their own views like he was, so are other people and how they react. I only really disrupt, or not disrupt, but just like, get in contact with public comment if it's disrupting like flow of committee, and it wasn't, and therefore I let it continue. And I personally don't think anyone was disrespected that night, but thank you so much for your comments.
Our last comment on this matter is Senator Upadhyula.
Yeah, I actually wanted to echo what Senator Woche was saying. I just think as a Senate class, we want to be as respectful to all community members who come in. I'm not saying that anything went wrong as external. I wasn't there. I just think that if there's any complaints from community members, we as Senate want to be as accessible to the general public as possible, so that more people want to come in, more people want to talk to us, and we can hear their opinions on all of these bills.
All right, we're now done with comments. As stated previously, the rolls have been closed. SB 33 is passed. Before we move on to other comments about other bills on SB 35, I do want to recognize Attorney General Sabo to clarify on procedure, lest we be plagued with some of the same problems that we have.
Hi. This is a really sensitive microphone. So I just want to be clear on something that I've noticed in the parliamentary procedure, is that when you make an incidental motion or a motion in which you can interrupt the floor, it doesn't mean that you obtain the floor and then immediately rush into whatever it is that you're going to articulate. Like when you rise to a point of order, which is interruptible, or when you rise to a point of personal privilege, which is interruptible, you say point of order or point of personal privilege, and then you wait to be recognized by the chair. You don't steam forward ahead into whatever prompted you to raise the point of order, point of personal, or personal privilege. So I just want to be clear on that, because I think that a lot of times it is abused to insert debate and to kind of cut the speakers list and to avoid the whole time and the restrictions on that. So please just be mindful that there's a reason that we use parliamentary procedure. Senator Quinn posted a great article the other day about why we use it. I suggest that you read it. Thank you.
As a side note, again, before we move into SB 35, in Robert's rules, but also in our governing documents, like there's guidelines for discussion and there's recourse if discussion is not going well and if people are not observing the parliamentary procedure and respecting the Senate floor. We haven't had to do that, at least in recent history, and I would hate to have to go in that direction, so I would just ask again that we recognize the amount of space that we're taking up in Senate and allow, the discussion to proceed as prescribed by our governing documents. We're technically on SB 35, Senator
Can I
Quinn.
point of personal privilege? Have I
Senator
been?
Quinn.
I just wanted to, Nolan kind of covered it, but I just really wanted to echo our community agreements about how much space we're taking up and really just waiting and abiding by these rules that were set up so that everyone had an equal chance to talk. Thank you.
All right, so we're now on SB 35, which I believe, Senator Mohabbat, you're the primary sponsor, is that correct?
Yes.
So would you like to introduce this bill for us?
So this bill is a bill urging President Obama to shut down the Guantanamo Bay detention camp. I guess I just wrote this bill because the ASUC has a tradition and a legacy of standing up for human rights or standing up against human rights violations, and for me, I feel like this is a human rights violation. So I would like to make a motion. Can I just make a motion now? Is that chill? All right. I would like to make a motion to change the last "therefore be it resolved" clause. It should be therefore be it further resolved, and then I'd just like to add ASUC President Pepito, just because I have a next therefore clause too.
It's actually okay for it to say finally resolved. It is the last one.
No, but I'm adding one after it.
Oh, then it's not. Okay.
Okay, should I just go into that one as well? And then the last one should read, therefore be it finally resolved that ASUC President Pepito writes letters to House Representative Barbara Lee, Senator Feinstein, and Senator Boxer with the same intent of the letter to President Obama.
Can you repeat
The last part. Senator Feinstein and Boxer with the same intent of the letter to President Obama.
Okay, so as we adjust the typos, if that accurately reflects what the primary sponsor of the bill is looking for, I would, one second, I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the bill as amended for discussion.
So moved.
It's moved and seconded. Are there any objections to the motion? Any abstentions? Abstain. All right, there's one abstention. So we are now discussing the bill as amended for the purposes of this discussion. Senator Mohabbat, do you have anything else in introducing the bill?
No.
Okay, Senator Feynman?
Can I call the previous question?
All right. Oh, I don't think we have a formal motion to pass the bill yet.
I move to pass the bill.
All right, there's been a motion to pass SB 35 as amended. It's been seconded. Are there any objections to the motion? Any abstentions? One abstention. Great. Motion carries. Congratulations, Senator Mohabbat. So we now move on to our last bill in immediate consideration, which is SB 42. Technically, I'm the primary sponsor because finance bills have to have an elected official sponsoring them, but I'll yield my time to Finance Officer Lee to introduce it, if you have comments on that. Just do you have comments about the finance bill? It was pulled.
I was gonna ask, if it were possible to make it, but I would probably just move to table it, so that way it can go back to FICOM and I can just explain that there. So yeah, if possible, but I don't know how it would work.
I just want to,
Oh, that would table, no,
Yeah.
sorry, that's, no, because that would table the whole thing, right?
Right, so just as a note, tabling the bill as it stands right now will prevent all of the student groups on the bill from getting money.
So, one thing I was gonna do is, I would just like to make an amendment, essentially, so what happened, wait. Am I allowed to explain how that would?
What exactly is, so you've been recognized to speak on this bill. What are you trying to do?
Yes, I'm just trying to make it an amendment. So on behalf of the Nigerian Student Association, essentially what happened is that they sent me at first the wrong invoice information, which was $590, and then they sent me the right one, which is $720. So I'm just trying to amend it to increase the original amount from $590 from the Space Reservations Fund to now $720. So it would be an increase of $130 for that. So that's an amendment I'm trying to make there.
I'd like to defer to one of our Finance Committee senators to speak on this. I saw I don't know the order. So Senator Pandya and Week.
So, Senator Novoche, you're trying to basically amend it so that NSA is taken off of this week's budget bill and then tabled to be put back in FICOM next week.
No. So originally I was trying to do that, but essentially all I'm trying to do is essentially just amend the amount to 720. If that makes anything clear.
Okay, so can I just object right now? Yeah, so I object with comment.
So there's been an objection to the motion, which has been noted, and the motion doesn't have a second right now. So is there a second to the motion? Because if there isn't, it will not survive. Okay, so the motion's been seconded, and now we're in discussion on the motion. So in discussion on the motion, Senator Pandya, do you have a?
Yeah, so basically, the bill came through FICOM, and we did discuss, the amount that we were going to give out of the Student Space Reservation Fund for the Nigerian Students Association's event at iHouse. The reason for their increase in the amount of funding that they're requesting is because they stayed an hour extra at iHouse during their event. And it's the opinion of the Finance Committee that we don't want to retroactively allow this to happen. It sets a bad precedent for student organizations in the future, saying that we will allow organizations to change the amount that they're requesting from us after an event retroactively. And so in order to prevent and to maintain what we have been doing in being very conservative about our spending this year, we are encouraging the Senate to not allow this increase.
Thank you, Senator Pandya. Just as a brief aside before I forget, when Finance Officer Lee noted the amount of money that you all have spent from contingency, I was blown away that you've been able to serve student groups in such an efficient way, because it was not like this last year. So congratulations on that. Is there further discussion on the motion that's at hand? Senator Week and then Senator Upadhyaya.
I also just wanted to mention that not every student group is fortunate enough to have direct contact with the senator, so if this were to happen to them, they couldn't come to, or a senator couldn't take the finance bill off the table and then try to amend it for them. And I just feel like that gives us, we're privileging specific groups over other ones, and I don't think we should set that precedent.
Thank you, Senator Week. Senator Upadhyaya.
So I guess I have more of a question for the Finance Committee. Because I know some groups come in retroactively after an event, and then they do a space reservation fund. In instance like this, would a group be able, let's say they get funding for a space reservation, would it be discouraged for them to come again if something like this happens, or if they have an extra space or something like that?
Senator Lee, do you have?
So we actually discussed that at Monday's meeting about room reservation fund, because we only have an allocated amount, and although we're supposed to spend all of it for this semester, we still have to take into account for next semester because it's $33,000 per year. So that being said, we are setting a cap for how much we're giving for student groups for the student reservation fund. I believe our cap is $12.50, was it? Yeah, it was $12.50 around. And so technically they could come back, but at the same time, we don't know how many student groups are going to come later on, especially because the student reservation fund is becoming more and more publicized as the semester goes on.
I'll also note that spring is a much busier semester for finance applications than fall. So because we're in discussion, is there anybody else who would like to comment on this bill before we go full circle? Senator Mahabat?
I would just like to remind everyone that in FICOM we're very judicious, we're very nonpartisan. We don't really favor groups over other groups. So I would just trust that, I would hope that you all trust our competency in doing this. We're not trying to be shady or anything. We're just doing what FICOM does. So trust us.
Okay. So I'll recognize Senator Woche, and again, we can. Senator Woche, do you have a?
Thank you. So one thing I was going to say essentially there's a false comment made. The 1 hour, that's not what happened. So that's why I was trying to speak the whole time. Essentially what happened is essentially that, so they told me 590, and then they now told me the 590 was only for the reservation of the place, but I did not charge you for the actual workers there. The overtime fee they did charge us, which is $60 for $15 per person. So if you all want to remove that $30 fee of the extra hour, those 2 people that stayed, that's all right. But the actual money that the hour, in terms of that, she did not charge me for the hour. She only charged me for the hour of paying the workers overtime. So that's one thing I want to say on that in terms of that. So that information there was not, that's not correct to make that. So, and then addressing your point in terms of trying to have privilege, I'm not trying to be privileged. I was just trying to clarify that motion once again that it was $590, and like I said, she didn't clarify to me that that $590 did not include the whole part. So when she now gave me the invoice, which I didn't come last week, guys, because I texted you, and essentially you all told me you passed it. I was going to explain to you the invoice part. So when she now gave me the invoice, I now said what happened here. She explained to me that essentially what happened, and she said that we did not charge you for the extra hour, but we did pay. You have to at least pay our workers for just staying an extra hour, and that's $30. So that does not include the fee that's actually here. That's what I was going to say on that part of the motion. So.
I saw Senator Stone, Mohabbat, thank you, Senator Stone, Mohabbat, Week, and then Iwoma.
So I guess with this situation, I'm sorry that your invoices got messed up, but then when we had FICOM, we agreed on the $590. Already knowing that this event had passed, we usually don't retroactively pay for things that have already passed. It's something you're supposed to do in the future, so that was something we did take into consideration, and I apologize that you got charged extra. So I think that's an issue that you should resolve with the individual and try to communicate with her to see what went wrong. But I just don't like the idea of just giving extra funding, especially at this last minute, going off what Lauren was saying too. We really want to be equal and be very cognizant and try not to favor folks on this idea. And that's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Okay.
My comment was just the same as Silverly's, so echo you.
Senators Week, Iwoma, and Feynman.
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize for the misinformation I gave to the Finance Committee with the extra hour. I briefly talked with Solomon before this. But definitely, I think moving forward with this, I think that as a member of Nigerian Student Association, I can understand things like this do happen, complications of it. But it's just speaking objectively, just from a standpoint of someone on Finance Committee, I think that we should either table this and maybe have Solomon be able to fix whatever happened with the Alumni House and address that issue and bring that information back to the Finance Committee. We'll table the specific matter, not the entire bill, and bring it back to Finance Committee, or just leave it like this at $590, and then we can maybe try to fundraise for the extra money. So I think that's what we should move forward with this and do.
Okay, so there's been a suggestion but not a formal motion. Senator Week.
Just to address Senator Noche, I'm not opposed to giving the Nigerian Student Association more money. I just think the way that we're going about this right now is incorrect because it's favoring a group. If we want to do that, then we can make a motion to take the Nigerian Student Association completely off this week's finance bill so we can still pass it for the other student organizations, and then the group can reapply and come back to Finance Committee and try to amend that amount. Or we can pass this and then the Nigerian Student Association can reapply and ask for more money later.
Okay, I want to recognize our finance officer.
Hi guys, so if the motion passed, the week 8 budget bill will become, so that appendix A allocated amount would be $720, and weekly total would be $2,390.23. So that's if the motion passed.
You mean 3,000?
$2,390.23.
That makes the amount.
Well, that's at the bottom.
Oh. Sure. Okay. I saw Senator Shen. Oh, Senator Feynman, then Senator Shen.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'm just going to make a motion to take off the Nigerian Student Associations for this week and table it to next week.
To send it back to FICOM?
To send it back to FICOM. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So is there a second to that motion? Second. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to amend the week 8 budget bill so as to take off Nigerian Student Association's funding request for this week and to send it back to the Finance Committee for consideration.
Request for information is the student reservation fund. So I know Solomon was talking about how the extra money, a lot of it's coming from service fees. Because I know previously in the ASUC,
kind of like room fee and service fees are separate, so does the
That's actually an excellent point. And so without understanding the details exactly on what fees are being charged here, the Student Space Reservation Fund is specifically to pay for the cost of renting the room. It is like whatever the upfront cost of like renting Poly Ballroom would have been, or whatever the upfront cost of renting a space would be. It does not cover anything except that. So if there are like service fees involved, or like cleanup fees, or like additional fees that were incurred that are not part of the actual space reservation, that's not what this fund is for.
I remove my motion and move the entire bill to previous question.
Second. Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn. And a new motion has been made to pass the bill as it is. Correct. Okay, so the motion has been made. Is there a second? Okay, we'll just say it's been moved and seconded. This is, again, the Week 8 budget bill. Just as a reminder, budget bills, as with anything that is related to finance, requires a 2/3 vote. So are there any opposed to passing the Week 8 budget bill? And again, this is like unamended. This is essentially as it came to us out of Finance Committee. Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. So we've passed the Week 8 budget bill. Before we move on to, I guess you can clap for that. Before we move on to any other consideration, I do want to bring one more public comment for someone who has been waiting to speak. His name is Chris Finn. He's also here to talk about BART workers.
Sorry to say I was at another meeting where Senator Mark Lasson here was talking about transportation issues, and he's the one that proposed a bill to take away the right to strike for public sector workers, or particularly for BART. So thank you for considering this. My name is Chris Finn. I'm a train operator. I'm also a PhD student over at the Goldman School. This is something we did not, the unions, I'm on the bargaining team for ATU, and SEIU and ATU were the two main unions involved, and we did everything we could to avoid a strike. So, we worked directly with the folks, the riders, so, we understand what you go through, so we did everything we could to prevent a strike. But these things are very important to maintain some kind of right to a strike. Even William Gold, the former chair of the National Labor Relations Board, is pointing out that if you take away the right to strike, in effect what you do is you take away any sense for management to kind of have any pressure to negotiate in good faith. And that's kind of what we saw during this whole process. There were about 20 local elected reps, representatives, politicians that were involved in the process that came in to try to get some resolution. We went through 4 state mediators. We went through 3 federal mediators when the federal government was shut down, including the top federal mediator in the country. And at the end, they realized that there was nothing they could do to prevent a strike because BART essentially hired somebody that's what they do. Thomas Hawk from Veolia, who tries to privatize public transit, and that's essentially what they tried to do. There was no way around it. But
Mr. Finn, you have about 30 seconds left.
Excellent, thank you. So it's not just about economics, it's about work rules, that the unions need to be involved. We're the ones that do the work, we're the ones that see what safety conditions are, and tragically we saw some of the consequences of that, and it's about people's right to bargain collectively. So again, thank you for all your efforts and work on this, and we all appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we are now moving past immediate consideration and into old business. Senator Chung?
Can I quickly just clarify something in the minutes? I meant to sponsor SB 39, not SB 40. And can I also get recognition from the chair to address a comment made by Senator Noche?
Yeah, so Mr. Litwack, as a note, sorry, you're changing from 39 to 40? Is that?
No, I meant to sponsor SB 39, not SB 40.
Okay, so for, yeah, you got that, okay. And then, yes, Senator Chung, you have...
So, just in the light of Senator Week last week talking about our need for the Senate class to be honest and upfront with each other, I do appreciate your comment to me, Senator Noche, about being offended that I moved to call the bill that was on the floor to a previous question. However, I also felt disrespected in the way that that comment was addressed to be very antagonistic, and as a senator that has paid a lot of time and attention to other bills that you have wanted to discuss on the floor and have given, and have like responded to your calls about certain bills that you thought were important and certain bills that you were working on. I just felt very disrespected in that way for you not being able to recognize that I do listen to you and I do care, and I was not trying to come off, I wasn't trying to silence you in any way, shape, or form, but as Mr. Litwack judiciously told us during Senate training, a lot of the problems that arise with Senate meetings is when we just continue to argue about things and not vote on anything and not work efficiently as a Senate class. That's why I moved to call to previous question with the understanding that senators could object to that motion as well. And I wanted to clarify that point with you, and I also want to sincerely apologize if I came off as rude or disrespectful, and also let you know how I felt in that context as well. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move into old business, and I do want to just have a brief conversation. I'm not sure how some of the things that get onto the agenda end up on the agenda, to be honest with you. If you have like a bill that you've been working on, or like something that you're trying to put on the agenda, that needs to come through me or through Lizzie. If you email Jordan directly to put it on the agenda, I've asked him not to do that, but the office manager makes the agenda at the direction of the Senate chair, which is me, right? Or Lizzie, who works on this very closely with me. And so like if for some reason like we're trying to squeeze something in on the agenda somewhere, please consult with us and don't go directly to the office manager about changing the agenda. I'll clarify with him exactly how SBs 10 and 32 got onto here, because again, I'm not sure. Senator Feynman?
Yeah, SB 10 was tabled indefinitely through Conrev, so it must be a typo.
I don't know how this happened.
Yeah, just for everyone's clarification, it was tabled indefinitely through Conrev, postponed indefinitely, tabled indefinitely, so that, we don't need to talk about it, we can skip that.
Okay, so we'll clarify that later, but I just wanted to put that out there in case anybody has any questions about how the agenda happens. We'll move from old business then into special committee reports. Are there any special committees, particularly appointment committees, that are still going on who would like to report anything out? Awesome, okay. Per Senator Mullins' clarification last week, we don't really have ASUC representatives right now per se, and if my memory serves me correctly, we haven't formally appointed any ASUC representatives. I will endeavor to further clarify how some things end up on the agenda that are supposed to not be on the agenda. For example, on the next page, after ASUC representative reports, we have elected official announcements this week, but not roll call or adjournment, which we had last week. It's a mystery. So, elected official announcements, I believe we started on Senator Wu's side last time, so we'll start then on Senator Chow's side.
Elected official announcements.
Yeah, two quick ones. So this week, Eric, Sean, Sahil, and I were all at the Hill Barbecue. I want to just continually invite all of you to come. The food's pretty good. Justin ate my chicken pad is pretty good. It's at 6 o'clock at Hilo, which is up the hill on Bancroft, right before Piedmont. It's open space. Any of you are welcome for a free barbecue. Nolan, Lizzie, Kevin, Mr. Litwack, Dennis, you guys can all come too. You all can come too. They do have vegan options actually. So if you're trying to get some of that, Wednesday, 6 o'clock, 6:15, let me know. And I'm sure my community members would love to meet and talk to you about anything, everything. Oh, and also, sorry. So November 11th, I'll tell you in a little bit next week or something, but my Senate office is hosting Shabbat dinner, or co-hosting Shabbat dinner at Hilo, which is like Friday night, like the day of Sabbath, just for a way for us to kind of, talk to the community, and I want to invite all of you, let you know that you're more than welcome to come share Shabbat dinner with us, and, learn what Shabbat is, kind of get that deal done. So, keep that on your radars. Thank you.
Gentle, please. These are the only ones we have.
Yeah, so I wanted to give y'all a quick update on the Ignite campaign that's going on. We've been meeting diligently every single week. we recently broke into like two sections. So like we've realized that the amount of people that are getting involved with the space with Ignite, that we're kind of like shifting into like two different directions, where we have folks who are working on like the UCSA side, who are working on like the legislation and stuff like that. And we have folks who are working on like the community organizing side that want to work on like getting hands-on in like the Bay Area with addressing the school to prison pipeline and the prison industrial complex. So if any of your constituents, y'all hear anyone doing any type of work on addressing the prison industrial complex or the school to prison pipeline, bring them to us, or any events that are coming up regarding any of those things. Ignite is 10 plus organizations that we can help publicize their events and publicize what they're doing. And City of Florida is making extreme progress to $10 million. I can tell we're getting really, really, really close. And also, I just want to acknowledge some of the things that happened tonight, whether any some remarks that were made tonight, or whether positive or negative. I just want to continue to affirm each other and understand that we're all doing great, positive work in the space. And for us to be able to keep all the whatever antagonism, like also I know understand some things do come to the space, but really try to build relationships with each other, talk with each other one-on-one after this, either whether anything y'all heard today from another senator what made y'all feel a certain way, to be able to address them in a way and have a dialogue with them to understand where each other is coming from, so we can make the space as safe and productive and effective as possible.
So I'm excited to announce that Envision, which is a club that actually got sponsored by FICOM with funding from Senate Contingency, is having a pitch competition on Saturday, November 23rd at 6:30. So it's their second annual pitch competition where you get to build a team and then present your idea to a bunch of entrepreneurs and mentors and VCs. And so it's just like good practice for anybody who's interested in starting their own startup. They gain like insightful feedback and such. Also, I know I brought it up quite a long time ago, but my office and event services is planning an internal event planning one-on-one for our HOS-sponsored organizations as well as professional clubs on campus, and it's officially going to be on November 18th from 3 to 4. The room is still to be determined, but if you're interested in coming, let me know.
I just wanted to let you all know that in light of Halloween, please tell your friends not to culturally appropriate and dress up in inappropriate costumes. We've had this conversation already once in the Senate space with regard to like theme parties, but Halloween is like the perfect time for people to just come out and do inappropriate shit. So please tell your friends not to do that. Like, seriously though, it's not funny. Like, I'm sure you all have seen all of these articles popping up on Facebook about people dressing up in blackface and people thinking that it's funny to dress up as Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. It's not funny and it's not okay and it's very offensive and very disrespectful. So if you see it, like, please address it and please tell your friends not to do it because it's just not cute. Like,
Two really quick things. First, this Sunday from 6 to 8 p.m. At iHouse is Asha for Education's Images of India event. It's a really big cultural event. It's a fundraiser for them, and a lot of the entertainment groups in the South Asian community, dance teams, singing teams, all of that will be there performing. So it's a great fundraiser for them, so come out. They have food, and it's a great time, and I'll be there. Another thing, this is like very important, and DJ's been working on this as well. Me, Justin, Quinn sit on the SIS leadership group, and in light of the survey that went out a few weeks ago, we are holding I guess you could call it a public forum, open forum for students next week. No, November 12th, the week after. November 12th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. in 60 Barrows. We'll confirm the room and time next week, but we're going to start publicizing about that, and I just want to encourage all of the senators to really publicize that and encourage students to come out, because that's going to be the most direct space for students to give input about what they want to see in the new Telebear system, the new financial aid system, the new class registration system, all of that, and that's going to last for like the next 25 years, and so I really encourage all of us to kind of make sure that our communities come out and voice their opinions about that. More updates will come next week. Thanks.
Hey everyone, first of all, I just wanted to thank you all for reading the BART bill very thoroughly. I'm sure you all did. and for like supporting all the workers that came out tonight and on Monday night. I have two quick announcements. Cal Berkeley Democrats is having a lobby training tomorrow, and since we're all now required to lobby, it might be cool for you to stop by. It's 7 to 8 somewhere in Dwinelle. I don't remember the exact room number. You can ask me tomorrow on the group chat or something. It's in Dwinelle 234. So you don't need to be a Democrat, but like, don't be a Tea Party Republican and come in. Thanks. And then on November 10th at 9 a.m. right here in our good old Anna Head, we're having a training for the Keystone XL rally and everything, and getting trained on how to deal with press, how to deal with police, and how to get arrested. So if you've ever wanted to get arrested, come talk to me. I got you.
Well, this is actually more of a question, but so I guess, I know last week when we were talking about executive officer reports, we were talking about how like there was kind of vague language in whether or not executive officers needed to be in the space during the time. And so I was just curious, because I know, I guess this is addressed towards the Attorney General. So in the bylaws, Article 515, it says like executive officers shall make a report at every regular Senate meeting and be required to yield unused time to questions from the Senate. And I agree that like, I think the thing is, yes, in terms of, like, I just wanted to get your opinion in terms of whether or not it's like, if it needs to be clarified more or not, because personally I just think it's very useful to have executives here, just so that we can, in terms of efficiency, and sometimes like emails do kind of get backlogged, and just kind of being able to kind of ask them questions directly is always nice.
Before we move into like interpretation of the clause, I would say as a member of Conrev, if Conrev is willing to take this on, that it's within your purview to revise it to your desired level of clarity.
Well, I guess the main question is it unclear, or do we, like, I just wanted to kind of get a sense of whether or not it was clear or not.
So are you asking whether they need to be present during the entire meeting?
Oh, no, just for the report. Like, in your opinion, do we need, because I guess the thing is, like, moving forward, if it is unclear, then we, as Conrad, we would kind of discuss kind of like whether or not how to make it more clear, and in terms of making just things more efficient.
Well, I mean, it doesn't clearly articulate whether or not a representative or a designee of the executive officer should be there, but I mean, the beginning part, the first, before the comma, the beginning clause, I mean, would be simply satisfied by the written report, because they did make a report. But the second part, in that they're required to yield unused time to questions from the Senate, would then seem to presuppose that they do need to physically be here. Although it does say executive officers, it doesn't say executive officers or their designee or anything like that. Although there is already a precedent in other parts of the governing documents that designees of those executive officers can perform those duties. For example, the executive vice president is responsible for communications, but it's sort of designated out to someone in his office. So I would suggest that you clarify whether or not designees can be there versus the executive officers themselves.
I also, just on that note, want to say part of the spirit of reordering the agenda as we have is so that there's like a predictable way that the meetings are going, not so much for us, but for the people who come to deliver special orders. I've stacked things prior to the special orders item because that predictably ends at approximately 8 o'clock. So whether that works for all of the executives all the time, I can't say. I know that sometimes an executive will send a proxy, or not a proxy, but like a designee to deliver the report. And so in whatever deliberation Conrev has about executive reports, I would urge you to consider, depending on how stringent you decide to be about that, the impact that that's going to have on what I can do with the agenda. Because from my experience last year, executives would roll in at whatever time was convenient for them, and the whole meeting would stop so that they could deliver the report, and then they would leave. And so I've tried to not have that this year, so that there's some semblance of order in the Senate meetings, and you all can start the special orders, and we can have our guest speakers start at a particular or semi-regular time. And so if you have questions about executive officer reports and the best way to revise them, I'd love to sort of be involved in that conversation, and especially if there are particular officers that you're thinking about, have them involved in the conversation so that we can come up with a solution that actually works and allows the executive officers to report to the Senate without
disrupting the Senate meeting completely.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just think just to add, before, like, I think it's just it needs to be clear in terms of like whether or not kind of the executives need to write the report. I just see the trap of where like the chief of staff kind of takes over all of that duty, if that makes any sense, where kind of it's no longer executive officer reports, but kind of like the chief of staff reporting on behalf of like, it's just like if the proxy is there for the written report and
So I would urge us to have this conversation.
yeah, we can do it
in
offline.
Conrad's.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Alright, hello y'all. So this upcoming, wait, not this, no, okay, no, I lied. It's Sunday, November 10th, Apposity, the Asian Pacific American Student Development Center, which is one of the multicultural student development centers, is holding KAPA, which is celebrating Asian Pacific American women, and this year's theme is Women with a Y, so having kind of like affirming the identity of women in the API community or the APA community and why that's important and their role and how they have been a huge advocate for their families and how they have been an advocate for themselves and very contributing to the API community in general. So it's kind of affirming that identity as well as learning more about it. And it is like a celebration where we do celebrate APA women. So if y'all identify as that, please come out. It's free food. There should be some vegan options, but please do come and you can RSVP at, give me a second, tinyurl.com/CAPAW, CAPAW 2013. So tinyurl/CAPAW 2013. It's gonna be in Anahead, 6:30, 6 to 9, November 10th.
Hi everybody, I have 3 announcements. One, thank you to everybody that participated towards Filipino American History Month. The last day is tomorrow, and the Filipino community successfully did several programs addressing the history, issues, and struggles of Filipino and Filipino Americans in the United States. This week actually is Bridges Multicultural Center's 1 week. Their theme this year is what it means to be a student of color in higher education. So feel free to come out to Sprout to see their programs, and they do have a community dinner on Friday. The RSVP link, if you're interested, I'll send it to you. Lastly, in terms of SB2, this is the 4th week of October, so the timeline for SB2 has officially expired for Janet Napolitano in terms of the vote of no confidence. From my assessment, she completed 3 out of the 9 demands, which means, or it invokes a vote of no confidence for Janet Napolitano. The 3 that she did somewhat accomplished were to hold open town halls at both Northern and Southern California regions for the UC campuses, ensure that 287G or secure communities are not implemented on the UC campus, and support the transparency and responsibility using state tools or Trust Act. But with the outline of the bill, it's still not enough to, I guess, escape the no confidence clause. And I will yield to our EVP for further instructions on how that will work out.
And I will consult with our Attorney General.
Hello, everyone. So, first off, I sent you all a form and I accidentally sent you the editing link, not the actual form link. So that's my bad. Anyways, so I'll resend out tomorrow, like, if you all could fill it out by Friday at 12 p.m. because we're gonna, like, discuss the forms that y'all filled out, that would be great. I'll fill out I'll send out the actual form link this time that you can, like, fill out, not, like, the edit. That's totally my bad. I do not know how to use Google Docs. Anyways, just to clarify, so this form that you're filling out is to, like, proactively, it's one to lobby during this dead week, but it's also to proactively state the interests of your community so that hopefully, like, we can try to influence legislation for the next year. So hopefully, there will be bills that we have pressed on lobbying before in 2 dead weeks, so spring dead week. But basically it's just really think to the interest of your community and please fill it out and let us know because we want to assign you with the right people lobbying the right things. Second, and we're really excited for that. Second, Alpha Chi Omega, Karen's and my sorority, is having spooky spaghetti. All proceeds go towards domestic violence awareness. Dress up in costume, an appropriate costume, and you can have spaghetti and salad and bread for only $5 if you tell us tonight, but $6 or something, that's the door. Probably, yeah. We can check. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that Theater for Charity and Bear Stage had an open mic night together last night, and apparently it went spectacular. No, Tuesday night. No, it went spectacularly, and I just think it's really cool that those two people, groups are collaborating and just having a good time together. Because they're both awesome and do so much for the performing arts community. Thank you.
Hi everyone, so with November comes Movember, which is a month to raise awareness for prostate cancer. So if anyone wants to, I'll be shaving on November 1st, trying to grow out my mo, and I know a lot of fraternities are doing the same thing, so if you want to find more ways to get involved with that philanthropy, contact me.
I'm really excited to announce that basketball season for Cal starts tomorrow, and I promise that our basketball team, both men's and women's, is a lot better than our football team. I think everyone should go to the games and support them because they actually, last year when I was campaigning, I did the calculations, only 1% of our student body goes to the basketball games for men's. So that's really sad to me because they're both really awesome teams.
Hello. So East Asian Union, we had our night market event last Thursday. It was really successful. Thank you all who came out to the event. We literally had hundreds of participants. So I have 2 really quick updates. So November 18th to 22nd is International Education Week. And during that week, I'm working on some collaboration with different cultural groups. So today when I went to Hilo with Grant, Sean, Liza, and Sahil, we talk about some potential, Solomon, I'm sorry. We're talking about some collaboration opportunity. We're thinking about doing an international food fest on Upper Sprout. So I'll be sending out more detailed information to the listserv, so if other people are interested, please feel free to contact me. And second, this Friday from 1 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. there's a annual career symposium for international students. We'll talk about some job search, internship search, employer panel. They'll be talking about what qualities they're looking for from students, especially international students. They'll also talk about work authorization. So if you know anyone who's an international student, please tell them to come this Friday at Anahead.
All right, everyone, before we move into the final roll call really briefly, I just want to remind everyone to please advertise for the standing committee secretary spots. We want to have a really good applicant pool to make sure that you all get good standing committee secretaries. I know it feels like the end of the semester is upon us, and it is, but these positions will transition into the spring as well. So you'll want to make sure that you get good people. Senator Truax?
Wait, so is the application like ready to post like tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It has been emailed out. The other thing I want to comment on before we adjourn, I think at like 7 in this room it was like me, Naweed, and Wendy or something, and there were a couple of people here, maybe like 4 or 5. There was a handful. And I do want to remind everyone that while Sergeant Williams is not here or hasn't been for these 2 weeks, he will return to us and begin reporting again at the beginning of the meeting, starting next week. And I would hate for the latest I can call the meeting to order is 7:05. I have to do it within 5 minutes of the time that's posted. So if I call the meeting to order at 7:05 and there are like 5 people in here, and then Sergeant Williams starts delivering his report, that's just it reflects poorly on the Senate for the representative from UCPD. And if we have chancellors and graduate students here who are delivering reports in the beginning as well, I think it reflects poorly on the ASUC that, you know, even though roll call is not until 7:20 and we know this, I think it would be better and more responsible for us to show up at the beginning of the meeting so that we can hear the entirety of the report. So thank you to those of you who showed up on time today. I know it's a tough time of year, and there are lots of midterms and other academic commitments and so forth that are going on, but I would urge you all to please be sure to come on time to the meetings. With that said, let's move into the final roll call of the evening. Senator Chow.
Present.
Senator Chung.
Present.
Senator Feinman.
Present.
Senator Iwoma. Senator Kong. Senator Lee.
Present.
Senator Mahabat.
Present.
Senator Mullen. Senator Woche.
Present.
Senator Pacheco.
Present.
Senator Pandya. Senator Quinn. Senator Rafi. Senator Shen. Senator Snon. Senator Tan. Senator Truax. Senator Padayula. Senator Week. Senator Wu. Senator Mullen. Okay. With that said, let's call this meeting adjourned at 10:30. Objections?
I object. Just, sorry, apologize. Just 3 things real quick.
Objection?
Oh, I'm sorry.
One objection doesn't mean that that happens. So are there other objections to adjourning the meeting? Any abstentions? So if there are no objections or abstentions, the meeting is adjourned at 10:30.